Ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Aula Magna of the University of Latvia, where we continue our celebrations of the 100 years of the University of Latvia. My name is Jauns, and I will be moderating today's symposium on a topic that seems to be gaining an increasing attention. That is a relationship between what was once thought to be an ivory tower, and that is university, and the society at large. I think that we all would agree that the expectations from universities are very high these days, and we are expected to provide excellent education. We're expected to produce top-notch research, to be at the forefront of many processes. And at the same time, our logic of internal development not necessarily always is conducive to being at the forefront of all these challenges. And that is why we decided that a symposium on this topic would be very appropriate, to look back not so much at the grandiose past of the University of Latvia of the last century, but rather to reflect what is of high importance today for universities, and what is of high importance to a broader community of policymakers, NGOs, businesses, and other important stakeholders. We have assembled two panels with distinguished participants, and I very much hope that we will all enjoy these discussions. And the format of today's symposium is such that we will have presentations of our panelists, and then I ask you to save your comments and questions until the latter part of the symposium, when there is a dedicated time slot for questions, answers, and other contributions. And now I would like to give floor for welcoming remarks to the acting rector of the University of Latvia, Professor Guido Straube. Please.
Thank you, paldies. Tā kā mēs, I speak in Latvia, sorry. Tā kā mēs iepriekš svinīgajā senātā runājām, ka mūsu universitāte dibināta kā nacionāla universitāte, tad līdz ar to, lai mēs neaizmirst latviešu valodu šeit, un lai tūkiem būtu ko darīt, es savu uzrunu īso beigšu latviski. Neapšaubām, pirmkārt, es gribu jūs apsveikt visus, ka šis simpozijs notiek priekš Latvijas universitātes svinīgā momentā, jo mēs svinām savus 100 gadus, un dabiski, kā priekš mūsu pašapziņas, tas ir ļoti svarīgs brīdis, jo mēs esam sasnieguši laikam to vecumu, ar ko katra universitāte ir lepojusies. Ceļš uz šo Nacionālo universitāti bija samērā sarežģīts, un šodien simpozijā doma, universitāte un sabiedrība ir attīstījies ļoti interesanti un daudz gadsimtu gaitā mainījis savu būtību. Man kā vēsturniekam vienmēr bijis interesanti skatīties, kādas ir sabiedrības attiecības ar inteliģenci, ar augstskolu. Tās veidojās pēc viena modeļa viduslaikos un krietni būtiskas izmaiņas, varbūt daudz kas no tā, ko zinām mēs šodien, ienāk universitātes un sabiedrības attiecībās slavenajā 18. apgaismības gadsimtā. Universitāte kļūst arvien plašāka un pieejamāka, kaut gan joprojām tā ir izredzēto ļoti mazas cilvēku saujiņas prioritāte, prerogatīva. Līdz ar to vēl ļoti grūti ieraudzīt šo universitātes un sabiedrības kopdarbību. Bet jo tuvāk mūsdienām, jo augstskolas, to studentu skaits pieaug, un līdz ar to pieaug arī augstskolu ietekme, universitāšu ietekme uz sabiedrību. Šodien, kad faktiski mēs ļoti stingri turamies pie tēzes, ka mācīšanās universitātē šai lietai jābūt pieejamai ikvienam iedzīvotājam, vēl plašāk, vēl aktuālāk padara šo problēmu universitāte un sabiedrība. Līdz ar to es domāju, ka šodienas diskusija ir patiešām tā vērta, un es ļoti ceru, ka no šīs diskusijas, kurā piedalās prominenti Eiropas izglītības speciālisti, veidotāji, organizatori un augstskolas speciālisti, mēs iegūsim patiešām kādas jaunas sapratnes, kā tālāk darboties. Jo sevišķi šajā momentā, kad mūsu priekšā stāv daudz izaicinājumi, tā skaitā šīs plašās diskusijas par to, kādai ir jābūt augstskolai Latvijā, kādai ir jābūt augstskolu pārvaldības formai, jo tas dabiski noteiks, kādas ir sabiedrības un augstskolas attiecības. Jo nedrīkst dabiski būt tā, ka augstskola, universitāte ir pār sabiedrību, ir varbūt augstprātīga, tai jābūt ir draudzīgās attiecībās ar sabiedrību, tai jādod viss tas labākais, kas top šajās alma mater sienās sabiedrībai, lai sabiedrība, valsts varētu no universitātes profitēt, un līdz ar to sabiedrība un valsts kļūtu arvien bagātāk, pilnvērtīgāk, demokrātiskāk, cilvēkiem draudzīgāk. Līdz ar to atļaujiet novēlēt simpoziju dalībniekiem veiksmīgas uzstāšanās, gudras domas, radošas un pilnvērtīgas diskusijas. Labu veiksmi! Paldies!
University of Latvia has profited from, intellectually profited, obviously, from a long-time cooperation and membership in the network of universities from capitals of Europe. And therefore, it is my great pleasure to give floor to the president of UNICA, Professor Luciano Sasso. Please.
Good afternoon to everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here in Riga for the second time. I saw yesterday I had a little bit of time and I managed to visit this very interesting city. The historical center is so well renovated. You have beautiful museums, etc. So I was really happy to be back here and to be back in this university, which I visited also 10 years ago for a similar anniversary. I think at that time was 90 years. So I want to congratulate on this occasion this university for the 100 years anniversary of the foundation. I want to thank the organizer for having accepted to organize this event and the event we have tomorrow together with UNICA, and especially the rector, of course, the vice rector Ina Druviete, the head of the international office Alina Gibralska, and their teams. And UNICA, just a few words. I don't want to take too much of your time at this moment. But UNICA is an important network, 30 years old, based in Brussels, and at the moment comprises 51 universities from 37 capital cities. So some of the best European universities are within this network. So I'm very proud to have been president for this network for 4 years now. And UNICA is really very much, interested, and we care a lot about values. So the title of this workshop today is really important for us. So to try to really take care of values in a moment of our society in which sometimes, we see that some information, some values are kind of diluted through the new forms of communication we have today, which of course are great per se, but they are having an effect, sometimes even political, which sometimes is not really what we desire. And so I believe that really European universities in general should make sure that young people, our students, will become citizens of our society with really the knowledge and the embedding in their own education these values. And first of all, of course, the values of European Union. We have to be very proud of having creating this very important organization, which is now slightly more than 60 years old. And it was created in a moment of history very difficult for many countries, both in the western part and eastern part of Europe. And many Italians, I'm Italian as you might have guessed, actually forgot that the first important treaty of the European community was signed in Rome on the 25th of March 1957. So actually I try to remind all the time my students that actually in a moment just a few years after the end of the Second World War, a few countries, at that time only six countries decided to get together and make peace, first of all, because I think the European Union achieved a lot, and we have speakers at the table who are more expert than me about that. But for me, the most important value, the most important achievement for European Union is peace. And as you know, a Nobel Prize for Peace was given to European Union, but again, I think many citizens of our European Union forgot about this. So I think, again, we need to have a very important role as universities because, of course, today to teach to students is not only to transfer knowledge. Knowledge is available through the internet, through many other forms of communication. But again, values and frames of knowledge is that we should deal with. And also, of course, national growth. We are in a moment of transition. We know that we are losing and we are going to lose many jobs in our society, in Europe and in other countries, and because of the digitalization, because of artificial intelligence, because of many other recent developments. But new jobs will be available. So universities, in my opinion, should anticipate this change and so educate students in a way that they will be ready to take these new developments. Again, this crisis in which we are living is something that will not probably end very soon, but the role of universities, again, will be to prepare our young people to take actions to create jobs rather than just seeking for jobs, which sometimes are not available anymore in certain sectors. So again, we have an important role, and I think this event is very important. Thank you very much also to the very distinguished speakers we have today for accepting this invitation. Thank you again for this organization of this event, and to all of you for participating.
The next speaker of today's panel is actually a graduate of the University of Latvia. He is graduated, he has gained a degree in physics, but he has spent only a couple of years working in that area, and he's much more known, at least in Latvia, as a politician. He has served as a member of the parliament, he has served as a member of the European Parliament, he has served as a minister, and he has been the longest serving prime minister in Latvia, which in itself is a huge achievement, and I say that without any irony because I'm a political scientist and I've done research on that. Trust me, that's not an easy job. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to give floor to the Vice President of the European Commission for the Euro and Social Dialogue, also in charge of financial stability, financial services, and the Capital Markets Union, Valdis Dombrovskis.
Augsti godātie rektori kungi, godātā universitātes vadība, komisāra kungs, dāmas un kungi. Vispirms gribētu pateikties šī simpozija organizatoriem par iespēju šodien būt šeit, Latvijas Universitātē, kas ir arī mana alma mater un kurā man vienmēr ir liels prieks atgriezties. Pagājušais gads bija mūsu valsts 100. gads. Šogad kārta ir mūsu valsts uzticamai pavadonei Latvijas Universitātei. Latvijas Universitāte cauri vēstures gājumam ir uzturējis vienu no svarīgākajiem mūsu nācijas attīstības priekšnoteikumiem – augstāko izglītību latviešu valodā. Šis uzdevums nevienmēr ir bijis vienkāršs un pats par sevi saprotams, it īpaši okupācijas gados. No šāda skatu punkta Latvijas Universitātes lomu Latvijas valstiskuma uzturēšanā ir grūti pārvērtēt. Kopš neatkarības atjaunošanas Latvija ir strauji integrējusies pasaules ekonomiskajā apritē, kur galvenais virzītājs spēks ir zināšanas. Tādēļ Latvijas augstskolas un Latvijas Universitāte, kā mūsu valsts akadēmisko zināšanu flagmanis, kļūst par aizvien nozīmīgāku faktoru mūsu uzņēmumu konkurētspējas un valsts ekonomiskās attīstības ilgtspējas nodrošināšanā. Šodien es gribētu ieskicēt galvenās tendences, ar kurām tuvākā desmitgadē būs jāsaskarās Eiropai un Latvijai, uzsvaru liekot uz izglītības un zinātnes lomu risinājumu meklēšanā un ekonomikas ilgtspējas nodrošināšanā. No ekonomiskās attīstības viedokļa pagājušo desmitgadi raksturo smaga finanšu un ekonomiskā krīze, kur daudz laika un enerģijas tika veltīts šīs krīzes seku pārvarēšanai. Skatoties uz priekšu, viens no galvenajiem izaicinājumiem gan Latvijai, gan Eiropai nākamā desmitgadē būs ekonomiskās izaugsmes ilgtspējas nodrošināšana, vienlaikus veicot ekonomikas transformāciju un virzoties uz klimata neitrālu ekonomiku. Eiropas politikas studiju centrs paredz, ka tuvākā desmitgadē turpināsies spiediens gan uz pastāvošo globālās pārvaldības sistēmu, gan uz Eiropā dominējošo liberālās demokrātijas modeli. Turpināsies dziļas izmaiņas gan pastāvošā ekonomikas modelī, gan sabiedrības struktūrā kopumā. Pasaule virzās jaunas ģeopolitiskās, ģeoekonomiskās un ģeotehnoloģiskās kārtības virzienā. Šajā kontekstā ekonomikas ilgtspēja lielā mērā ir saistīta ar diviem faktoru kopumiem. Mikro, jeb uzņēmumu līmenī ekonomikas ilgtspēja būs iespējams nodrošināt ar darba ražīgumu, jeb produktivitātes kāpināšanu. Makro, jeb valstu līmenī ekonomikas ilgtspēja noteiks valstu spēju sekot līdz tehnoloģiskās un sociālās transformācijas procesiem, to institūciju kvalitāte un gatavība saulaicīgi veikt reformas. Ja runājam par darba ražīgumu, jeb produktivitātes izaugsmi Eiropas Savienībā, jāuzsver, ka gan Eiropā, gan citās attīstītās ekonomiskās šī izaugsme palēninājās jau krietni pirms krīzes. Kaut arī produktivitātes izaugsmes palēnināšanās skāra vairumu attīstīto ekonomiku, produktivitātes atšķirības starp Eiropas Savienību un ASV pēdējo 20 gadu laikā ir pakāpeniski pieaugušas, Eiropas produktivitātes līmenim atpaliekot no ASV līmeņa. Latvija kopā ar pārējām Baltijas valstīm, kā arī Rumāniju un Poliju, kopš 1995. gada ir uzrādījušas visaugstākos produktivitātes pieauguma tempus, salīdzinot ar citām Eiropas Savienības dalību valstīm. Šodien stundas produktivitāte Baltijas valstīs jau ir sasniegusi 50 līdz 60% no Eiropas Savienības vidējā rādītāja. Pēckrīzes periodā produktivitātes izaugsme Latvijā ir bijusi noturīga, bet agrīnā iedzīšanas posma sniegtie vieglie ieguvumi jau ir izsmelti. Kopš 2010. gada produktivitātes izaugsme bija vidēji 2,4% gadā. Tas joprojām ir starp augstākiem rādītājiem Eiropas Savienībā, tomēr produktivitātes izaugsme ir 2 reizes lēnāka nekā pirms krīzes. Pēdējos gados dēļ saspringtās situācijas darba tirgū arī darba alga pieaugums Latvijā ir bijis starp straujākajiem Eiropas Savienībā. Tas līdz šim nav būtiski ietekmējis Latvijas eksporta rādītājs, bet, ja saglabāsies pašreizējās algu un produktivitātes tendences, ilgtermiņā varētu ciest Latvijas eksporta konkurētspēja. Vidēji ienākumu valstīs, pie kurām pieskaitām arī Latvija, tieši augoša produktivitāte ir izšķirošs faktors algu un vispārējā sabiedrības labklājības līmeņa celšanai, vienlaikus saglabājot valsts konkurētspēju. Latvijas gadījumā produktivitātes un attiecīgi ilgtspējīgam algu pieaugumam ir būtiska loma arī negatīvo migrācijas tendenču apturēšanā. Mūsdienu straujās tehnoloģiskās attīstības laikmetā produktivitātes pieaugumam aizvien vairāk būs jābalstās uz zinātnes ietilpīgām ekonomiskām aktivitātēm. Latvijas relatīvi vājākais punkts ir bijusi inovācija, kām nepieciešami ieguldījumi pētniecībā un inovācijā, cilvēku zināšanu un prasmi pilnveidošanā un citos nemateriālos aktīvos. Šeit savu ieguldījumu problēmas risināšanā var sniegt arī cieši izglītības un pētniecības sasaiste ar ražošanu un reālo ekonomiku. Šai tēmai es pieskaršos nedaudz vēlāk. Atgriežoties pie Eiropas produktivitātes problemātikas, Pasaules ekonomikas fóruma 2020. gada konkurētspējas ziņojums norāda, Eiropas investīcijas zināšanu ietilpīgos aktīvos kļūs par svarīgiem produktivitāti veicinošiem virzītājspēkiem nākotnē. Šie virzītājspēki būs šādi: vispārējais uzsvars uz izglītību, informāciju un komunikāciju tehnoloģijām, digitālo dienas kārtību un reformām, kas vērstas uz uzņēmējdarbības vides uzlabošanu reģionā. Pārējot pie makro līmeņa faktoriem, iezīmēšu būtiskākos Eiropas un arī Latvijas ekonomikas ilgtspēju ietekmējušos faktorus. Aizvien dinamiskāki digitālās, tehnoloģiskās, sociālos un citu jomu transformācijas procesi, kas kļūst aizvien zināšanu intensīvāki. Nepieciešamīgi pastāvīgi pilnveidot ekonomiskās pārvaldības modeli un to nodrošinošo institūciju darbību, un visbeidzot, valstu spēja saulaicīgi veikt reformas, lai pielāgoties strauji mainīgai situācijai. Šo spēju pielāgoties mēs aizvien biežāk saucam par gatavības kultūru. Mūsdienās zināšanas ir kļuvušas par ekonomiskās attīstības galveno virzītājspēku, un tas ir atstājis savu ietekmi arī uz situāciju darba tirgū. Tehnoloģiskā procesa rezultātā aug pieprasījums pēc augsti kvalificēta darba spēka. Pēc Eiropas komisijas vērtējuma jau tuvākā nākotnē Eiropā 4 no 5 darba vietām prasīs augstu kvalifikāciju. Augstu kvalificēta speciālistu pieejamība ir arī viens no investīcijas veicinošiem faktoriem. Saskaņā ar ārvalstu investoru padomes Latvijā pētījuma rezultātiem, viens no šķēršļiem investoru ienākšanai mūsu valstī ir tieši augstu kvalificēta darba spēka trūkums. Šeit jāatzīmē, ka kopumā augstāko izglītību iegūšo studentu skaits Latvijā ir salīdzinoši augsts un pat pārsniedz Eiropas Savienības vidējo līmeni. 2018. gadā vecuma grupā no 30 līdz 34 gadiem augstāko izglītību iegūšo skaits bija 42,7% pret Eiropas Savienības vidējo rādītāju 40,7%. Un vecuma grupā no 20 līdz 34 gadiem augstāko izglītību iegūšo nodarbinātības rādītājs ir strauji pieaudzis līdz 84,1%, pārsniedzot arī Eiropas Savienības vidējo rādītāju 81,6%. Neskatoties uz šiem kopumā pozitīvajiem datiem, Latvijā joprojām problemātiski ir speciālistu sagatavošana eksaktā zinātņu sfērā. Tā piemēram, tā saucamajās STEM jomās - zinātne, tehnoloģijas, inženierzinātnes un matemātika - augstskolu beidzēju īpatsvars Latvijā joprojām ir starp zemākajiem Eiropas Savienībā. 2017. gadā tie bija 21% pret Eiropas Savienības vidējo rādītāju 26%. Turklāt dabas zinātnēs, matemātikā un statistikā šis rādītājs 2016. gadā bija zemākais Eiropas Savienībā. Augstāk minētie rādītāji parāda, ka, lai saglabātu ekonomikas konkurētspēju, Latvijā liela uzmanība ir jāvēlt studēt gribētāju piesaistei tieši eksaktajām studiju jomām. Runājot par Eiropas darba tirgus nākotni, kā jau minēju, strauji pieaugs pieprasījums pēc augsti kvalificētiem darbiniekiem, īpaši ar digitālām prasmēm. Jau šobrīd lielākā daļa darba vietu prasa kaut minimālu digitālās pratības līmeni. Tomēr statistika rāda, ka Eiropas Savienības līmenī 35% strādājušo nav nepieciešamo IKT pamatprasmju, bet 10% nav digitālo prasmju vispār. Attiecībā uz digitālās transformācijas procesu Latvija kopumā uzrāda labu progresu, bet atpaliek digitālo tehnoloģiju integrēšanā uzņēmumu līmenī. Latvijas stiprās puses ir savienojamība, uzņēmējdarbības kultūra un jaunu uzņēmumu veidošana, kur rādītāji ir virs Eiropas Savienības vidējā. Šādā situācijā nepieciešams meklēt jaunus, efektīvus veidus, kā veidot saikni starp izglītību un zinātni un industriju. Vēl pagājušā gadsimta 40. gados austriešu ekonomists Šumpēters uzskatīja, ka ilgtermiņa ekonomiskā izaugsme nav iespējama bez inovācijām un tehnoloģiju attīstības. Šī atziņa iespējams veicināja arī pakāpenisku universitāšu transformācijas procesu, tām aizvien vairāk iekļaujoties ekonomiskajā apritē. Balstoties uz šo atziņu, 60 gadus vēlāk ekonomiski Etkovits no Stanfordas universitātes un Leidensdorfs no Amsterdamas universitātes izstrādāja tā saucamo trīskāršās spirāles, jeb triple helix konceptu, kur ietvaros tika apskatīta saikne starp izglītību, pētniecību un uzņēmējdarbību. Šajā konceptā viņi apskata pārēju no klasiskās universitātes ar tās mērķiem un uzdevumiem, izglītība un zināšanu nodošana, uz jauna tipa uzņēmējdarbības universitātēm. Uzņēmējdarbības universitāte ir trīskāršās spirāles koncepta centrālais elements. Tajā galvenais uzsvars tiek likts uz sadarbību starp akadēmiju, industriju un valdību. Kompānijām tehnoloģiski attīstoties, rodas nepieciešamība pēc augstāka līmeņa apmācības un informācijas apmaiņas. Valdība šajā modelī papildus savai regulātoru funkcijai darbojas kā publisks uzņēmējs un riska kapitālists. Šeit gribētu atzinīgi atzīmēt to, ka augstākās izglītības padomes izstrādātajā Latvijas augstākās izglītības un augstskolu attīstības koncepcijā 2013–2000 gadam, ka šī koncepcija lielā mērā balstās uz tikko minētā koncepta pamatnostādnēm. Koncepcija skaidri nosaka, ka Latvijas augstākās izglītības attīstības stratēģiskais mērķis ir tādas augstākās izglītības sistēmas izveide, kura balstoties uz publiskās, privātās un akadēmiskās vides sadarbību, nodrošinātu Latvijas valsts tautsaimniecības un augstākās izglītības sistēmas konkurētspējīgas attīstību Eiropas kopējā telpā. Koncepcijā arī detalizēti tiek apskatīts modernizēts daudzkāršās spirāles modelis kā pamats Latvijas inovāciju infrastruktūras veidošanai, veidojot starptautiski konkurētspējīgu, ilgspējīgu, vidēji saudzīgu zināšanu, radošumu un inovāciju ekonomiku. Ieviesta dzīvē šī pieeja radīta arī pamatu Latvijas augstākās izglītības sistēmas veiksmīgai integrācijai topošajā Eiropas izglītības telpā, kur Eiropas Savienība plāno izveidot līdz 2025. gadam. Kā viena no pirmajām savu pieteikumu ir iesniegusi arī Latvijas Universitāte, par ko es gribētu izteikt atzinību universitātes vadībai. Eiropas komisija pilnībā apzinās saiknes starp izglītību un pētniecību un inovācijām nozīmi. Piemēram, Eiropas Inovāciju un tehnoloģiju institūts jau šobrīd sniedz atbalstu Latvijai šīs saiknes stiprināšanā. Eiropas Inovāciju un tehnoloģiju institūts savā runā minēs arī komisārs Navrāčičs kungs, tāpēc šeit gribēju tikai atzīmēt, ka Latvija ļoti labi izmanto tās sniegtās iespējas, un 2017. gadā Latvija bija starp 6 aktīvākajām institūta programmu apguvējām. Tagad pievērsīšos otram manis minētajām ilgspējīgu ekonomisko izaugsmi ietekmējušam faktoram, proti nepieciešamībai pastāvīgi pilnveidot ekonomiskās pārvaldības modeli un to nodrošināšo institūciju darbību. Tas ir svarīgs uzdevums arī Eiropas Savienības līmenī. Ekonomiskās un sociālās attīstības pamats un priekšnoteikums arī turpmāk būs makroekonomiskā un fiskālā stabilitāte. Tādēļ šobrīd turpinās darbs pie eirozonas reformām, jeb ekonomiskās un monetārās savienības padziļināšanas, tā skaitā Eiropas stabilitātes mehānisma reformas, Banku savienības pabeigšanas un Eiropas kapitāla tirgus savienības izveides. Gatavojot nākamo Eiropas Savienības daudzgadu budžetu, notiek darbs pie eirozonas budžeta instrumenta, jeb konverģences un konkurētspējas budžeta instrumenta izveides, lai atbalstītu strukturālās reformas un investīcijas dalībvalstīs ar mērķi stiprināt to ekonomiku drošumspēju. Viens no lielajiem izaicinājumiem Eiropā joprojām ir zemais investīciju līmenis. Tādēļ tā ir viena no galvenajām Eiropas komisijas prioritātēm. Turpinot tā saukto Junkera plānu, nākamajam Eiropas Savienības daudzgadu budžetam Eiropas komisija ir izstrādājusi InvestEU programmu, kas ļaus mobilizēt papildus investīcijas vismaz 650 miljārdu eiro apmērā. Ņemot vērā pētniecības un inovāciju nozīmi ekonomikas ilgtspējas nodrošināšanā, Eiropas komisija piedāvā būtiski palielināt Horizon programmas finansējumu. Jaunajai Horizon programmai nākamajam 7 gadu periodam ir pieprasīts 100 miljārdu eiro pašreizējo 80 miljārdu eiro vietā. Jāatzīmē gan, ka centrālās un austruma Eiropas valstu dalība Horizon 2020 programmā ir bijusi visai pieticīga. Šajā programmēšanas periodā no 2014. gada centrālās un austruma Eiropas valstis ir saņēmušas tikai 4,71% no kopējā pieejamā finansējuma, bet Latvijas saņemtais finansējums ir viens no zemākajiem 0,18%. Domāju, ka te ir pamats izvērtēt gan Latvijas aktivitāti šī finansējuma piesaistē, gan arī kopējos Horizon programmas sadalas kritērijus, uzlabojot geogrāfisko balansu līdzekļu sadalē. Turpinājumā īsi iezīmēšu galvenos izaicinājumus Latvijas ekonomikas ilgtspējai nākamajā desmitgadē un ar to saistītajiem izglītības un zinātnes aspektiem. Tāpat kā Eiropas Savienības līmenī, arī Latvijas galvenais uzdevums tuvākajai desmitgadē ir ekonomikas konkurētspējas un ilgtspējas nodrošināšana. Tehnoloģiskais progress rada jaunus tirgus, pārveido vērtību ķēdes, fundamentāli maina konkurences apstākļus, lai veicinātu Latvijas ekonomikas konkurētspēju, kā viens no galvenajiem uzdevumiem nākamajai desmitgadē būs ciešas saiknes izveidošana starp izglītības, inovāciju un pētniecības sistēmām un reālo ekonomiku. Šeit jāatzīmē valdības deklarācijā minētais mērķis nodrošināt valsts budžeta finansējumu pieaugumu starptautiski konkurētspējīgai uz izcilību vērstai augstākai izglītībai. Svarīgs mērķis ir arī kāpināt mūsu izglītības sistēmas konkurētspēju, panākot, ka vismaz viena universitāte iekļūst 500 pasaules labāko universitāšu skaitā. Vienlaikus jāatzīmē, ka samērā pieticīgais Latvijas sniegums inovāciju jomā, vidēji izglītības un prasmi rādītāji, kā arī emigrācijas rezultātā sarūkošais talantu potenciāls, rada zināmas bažas par ekonomikas spēju būtiski kāpināt sniegumu zinātņu ietilpīgās jomās. Šajā kontekstā gribētu uzsvērt tieši talantu piesaistes nozīmi Latvijas ekonomikai. Jo šodienas atvērtajā pasaulē par talantu piesaistīšanu cīnās ne tikai kompānijas, bet arī valstis. Viens no galvenajiem talantu piesaistes nosacījumiem, protams, ir pietiekams skaits attiecīgu kvalifikāciju prasošu darbu vietu. Arī pievilcīga studiju un sadzīves vide var būt viens no talantu piesaistes veidiem. Šajā kontekstā pēdējos gados ir spērti nozīmīgi soļi Latvijas universitātes infrastruktūras attīstīšanā ar dabas un zinātņu māju nodošanu eksploatācijā. Gribētu arī pieminēt, ka jaunā universitātes kampusa būvniecībā ir ticis piesaistīts gan Eiropas Savienības fondu, gan arī tā saucamā Junkera plāna finansējums. Atgriežoties pie talantu piesaistes, galvenā prioritāte, protams, ir panākt, lai pēc iespējas vairāk vietējo talantu palikt Latvijā. Tomēr arī ārzemju studentu piesaiste ir svarīga, tādēļ atzinīgi vērtējams fakts, ka Latvijas augstākās izglītības sistēma sāk atvērties ārzemju studentiem un arī pasniedzējiem. Pēdējo 10 gadu laikā ārzemju studentu skaits Latvijā ir 4-kāršojies, un 2017. gadā Latvijas augstākās mācību iestādēs ārzemju studentu skaits sasniedza 11% no studējošo kopskaita. Paralēli aug arī viesprofesoru un to asistentu skaits Latvijas augstākās izglītības mācību spēkos. Šobrīd Latvijas augstskolās 5,6% no mācību spēkiem ir ārvalstu pasniedzēji ar mērķi līdz 2020. gadam sasniegt 7% slieksni. Paralēli talantu piesaistēji gan valsts ekonomikas konkurētspējas, gan ilgspējas nodrošināšanā liela loma būs investīcijām. Īpaši vērība jāpievērš investīcijām, kuras vērstas uz to, lai Latvijas uzņēmumi spētu iekļauties globālajās augstas pievienotās vērtības ķēdēs. Šeit kā šķērslis jāmin Latvijas zemais ieguldījumu līmenis pētniecībā un attīstībā. 2017. gadā izdevumi pētniecībai un attīstībai bija 0,51% no IKP, salīdzinot ar 2,1% no IKP Eiropas Savienības vidējo rādītāju. Šāds ieguldījuma līmenis ir viens no zemākajiem Eiropas Savienībā un pēdējo gadu laikā nav būtiski mainījies. Pārējot pie trešā faktora, ko iepriekš minēju, valstu spējai saulaicīgi veikt reformas, kas nepieciešams, lai nodrošinātu ilgspējīgu ekonomisko izaugsmi. Globālā finanšu un ekonomiskā krīze smagi skāra gan Latviju, gan arī daudzas citas Eiropas Savienības dalību valstis, un tās rezultātā gan Eiropā, gan Latvijā tika īstenot virkni reformu. Krīze parādīja, ka tā brīža ekonomiskā un fiskālā pārvaldības sistēma nebija efektīva. Tādēļ tika nostiprināta dalību valstu fiskālo un makroekonomisko politiku koordinācija un uzraudzība, kā arī izveidots finanšu un ekonomisko krīžu vadības ietvars. Arī Latvijā tika īstenot virkni reformu, liela daļa no tām jau krīzes laikā, bet daļa pēckrīzes periodā. Daļa reformu, tā skaitā augstākā izglītības sistēmas reforma, turpinās vēl šodien. Tomēr mūsdienu strauji mainīgajā pasaulē, lai saglabātu konkurētspēju un nodrošinātu ekonomikas ilgspējīgu izaugsmi, mums pastāvīgi jābūt gataviem īstenot nepieciešamās reformas. Mums jāizkopj tas, ko es jau teicu, ko tagad dēvē par gatavības kultūru. Tātad nevis tikai reaģēt uz krīzēm, bet jāspēj saulaicīgi noteikt attīstības tendences un veikt nepieciešamās reformas. Šeit savukārt lielu lomu spēlēs Latvijas institūcija kvalitāte, darbs pie kura pilnveidošanas arī ir viena no augstākajām valsts prioritātēm. Un visbeidzot, par izglītības lomu ilgspējīgas ekonomiskās attīstības nodrošināšanā. Šī gada jūlijā OECD publicētais ziņojums Going for Growth, kurš nosaka OECD dalību valstu reformu prioritātes, atzīst, ka izglītības sistēmas reformas ir izšķirošas esošajām un nākamajām paudzēm, nodrošinot iespēju atrast darbu, kurš gan cels produktivitāti, gan ļaus ikvienam dzīvot pilnvērtīgu dzīvi. Latvijas Universitātei, ieejot savā 2. gadsimtenī, vēlu veiksmi, panākumus un spēju augt līdzi laikam. Gribētu nobeigt savu runu ar vēlējumu, kuru satur arī universitātes himna. Svešlaikā ozoliem mūžīgiem vītums, visiem, kas mūžīgu uguni kur. Paldies!
Vice President Dombrovskis spoke about a range of challenges for the Latvian economy and statehood in general, but they were more related to the sphere of national economy, whereas I suspect that the next speaker could devote somewhat more attention to perhaps non-economic aspects of the challenges that universities face. And this is not simply because he's a political scientist by education, but what is perhaps even more importantly, he is the commissioner, European Commissioner for Education, Culture, Youth and Sport. Commissioner Navcic, the floor is yours.
Good morning, rectors, Vice President of the European Commission, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor for me to be here with you today to celebrate the centenary of the University of Latvia. The journey to this milestone has been long and sometimes difficult, but you can be very proud of what you have achieved for your students, for Latvia, and for Europe. Congratulations and best wishes for the 100 years to come. I'm also very pleased to be here because of the focus you have chosen for this symposium. Indeed, universities are a fundamental part of our societies. They provide us with a compass, showing us how to grow, reminding us of what we should cherish. What the University of Latvia did in 1919 is a powerful example of this. By offering higher education in the Latvian language, the institution allowed Latvians to develop their culture and their country. This institution also survived and indeed fought oppression during the Soviet era. This really is something worth celebrating. It is the spirit of institutions like the University of Latvia, the spirit of brave, principled people like the ones who led it in those dark days that has made it possible for all of us to be here today. The University of Latvia has spent the last 100 years working for independence, the freedom of science and creation, and service to society, while building an academic community of distinction. You have spent the last 100 years promoting civic engagement, diversity of thought, and a fair, open, and democratic society. This is a key mission of any university. Another is to drive economic growth and development. But while many of Europe's universities are doing well here, overall our higher education institutions are not as competitive on the world stage as they could be. Indeed, after the departure of the United Kingdom, the European Union will be left with no universities in the top 30 of the international rankings. And although we have many universities serving our regions and cities, we do not manage to make the most of their potential in driving innovation, entrepreneurship, and progress. I believe that we can overcome these issues. We can do so through two key factors: internationalization and cooperation. Universities with an international outlook help to transfer knowledge, methods, and attitudes that enable people to tackle issues from different points of view. This kind of creative effort is essential if we want to tackle the big challenges facing our societies. And it is a precondition for the openness that we need to boost academic achievement and build strong, cohesive communities. Cooperation helps universities achieve the critical mass needed for innovation to happen. And it ensures that these universities become true engines of development in all of Europe's regions. I'm very proud to say that during my time as Commissioner, cooperation on education reached a whole new level in Europe. Education is back where it belongs, at the top of the EU's political priorities. With member states, we have put in place the foundations of a true European education area, a space where it is normal for students, teachers, and researchers to study, teach, cooperate, and do research across borders. A space that is focused on excellence, inclusion, and openness. I'm very pleased that, taking up our proposal, member states have committed to take steps towards recognizing each other's diplomas. This should be automatic for any student in an EU member state who accesses education anywhere in the EU without the need for any additional separate procedure or cost. In addition, I wanted to ensure that students get all the support they need before, during, and after their studies abroad. That is why we've been working on the European Student Card, which will be fully rolled out as of 2021. This initiative will make it easier for students to learn abroad and reduce the administrative burden for both students and universities. In the European education area, which we want to be complete by 2025, universities will have to be big strategic players in the economy and society. To do so, they need to pool their strengths and to be able to cooperate across borders. This will require support at national and European level. That is why we launched the European Universities Initiative last year with the first pilot. I'm pleased that the higher education community responded with enthusiasm and very promising ideas. We had applications from 54 alliances involving more than 300 higher education institutions across the European Union, from which 17 alliances involving 114 institutions were selected. I congratulate the University of Latvia, which is among these first pioneers. The alliance you're part of, Fortem, will be one of the first ones to drive systemic, structural change in cooperation between education, business, the labor market, and wider society. It is inspiring to see how your project combines excellent quality education with the geographical and social inclusion that are the hallmarks of this initiative. Finally, the purpose of universities is fundamentally social. They act within and for society. That is why we should help universities connect with entrepreneurs, companies, with the industries that benefit from their work and with people. This is critical for universities to really understand the challenges facing the communities in which they are located, from water management to preserving coastal economies or managing the impact of migration, for example. And the solutions you come up with at local and regional levels can also pave the way for EU level and even global solutions. On this point, I would like to highlight the European Institute of Innovation and Technology, or EIT. As Vice President Dombrovskis has pointed out, the Institute is unique in boosting innovation by focusing on education, on the talents and entrepreneurial spirit of our most precious resource, people. And thanks to its decentralized nature, the EIT is ideally placed to support innovators and to develop the concrete solutions that will help us build a resilient Europe for the future. Indeed, every local community is different. Each has its own challenges, strengths, and priorities, so it is important that each community can find its own areas of interest for growth and development. Universities have a key role to play for our societies, but this also implies that they need to be adequately funded. However, many member states still invest less in education than they did before the economic crisis, and this is worrying. Putting funds into education and in universities is not expenditure. It is an investment in the future of our societies and economies, our ability to innovate, to compete on the global stage, and to build cohesive communities. That is why it is crucial for all member states to increase their investments here. Ladies and gentlemen, the European education area is a huge step forward for us. It is the ambitious vision we need to tackle the challenges facing us today. It will be a critical element in making sure Europe can compete in the global race and play its part in preserving this planet, building peace, democracy, and freedom across the world. And the European education area will bring us closer to each other, helping to create a European identity and a shared sense of belonging. I'm very proud of everything we've achieved over the last few years. You all will have a big role in filling this wonderful project with life. Thank you again for inviting me to be part of this celebration. The future of your university and of higher education in Europe will be shaped by your ideas and your service to the society. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Navracic spoke about the values underlying the European education area, and he also emphasized how this area helps individual universities to achieve their goals. But what struck me in particular was his remark that universities act within and for societies. And I would certainly share this view, and I believe that not all universities have the same functions in all countries. And therefore, I'm particularly pleased to see as the next speaker someone who presides over a university that functions within a relatively small society that has its own specific functions, some of the functions that were mentioned perhaps during the morning session when we had the Senate meeting, and those are functions that are very much related to the national identity of the society within which a particular university functions. Therefore, it is my great pleasure to welcome here Rector of the University of Tartu, Professor Tomas Ase.
Dear colleagues, rectors, the Vice President of the European Commission, dear friends, and of course, ladies and gentlemen, I don't see many students in the audience, but I'd like to welcome also the students. It is really my pleasure to address this distinguished audience and congratulate the University of Latvia on this very auspicious occasion. On behalf of the University of Tartu community, I wish the University of Latvia and all of you a very happy anniversary. Throughout the history, the University of Latvia has been an influential force in advancing education or welfare in this country. As is the case with the University of Tartu and Estonia, Latvia's success and the development of the University of Latvia have been intertwined. Our universities have both served as some kind of hotbeds of national elites. We have been intertwined, and these elites are political, cultural, and economic. It is not unusual for the university to have something to do with a nation building. But in Estonia and Latvia, the importance of our national universities has to be taken into account as a crucial, because Estonia and also Latvia, as a political nations, are relatively recent phenomenon. However, my presentation today, I'm not going to cast a nostalgic look into our illustrious past, but rather direct my gaze into the future by offering my thoughts on the changing role of the universities in today's world. Because it seems very clear that, and I'm quoting one of the former presidents of Estonia, Mr. Toomas Hendrik Ilves. He was saying that what has brought us here, what has served us well until now, does not take us any further. So I'm not very original in saying that, but the key word in describing our future is uncertainty. We are facing unprecedented changes, social, economic, definitely environmental, driven by accelerating globalization and a faster rate of technological developments. At the same time, those forces are providing us with the countless new opportunities for human advancement. The future is definitely uncertain. And I think that all of us, we know that we cannot predict it. What we can do, we need to prepare for it. The universities today will remain the most important intellectual powerhouses of the society. As such, they are expected to come up with the novel solutions to unprecedented challenges. They are facing increasing demands to prepare students for rapid economical, environmental, and social changes. The jobs that have not yet been created, or for technologies that have not yet been invented, and to solve the social problems that have not yet been anticipated. However, we will not be able to find solutions to the complex challenges facing our societies in the coming decades just by trial and error or simply a gut feeling. So in Estonia, a work group led by the government office has recently drawn up a list of priority development challenges for at least next 15 years. The list of long-term goals, which in all probability is relevant to Latvia and most of the European countries too, it contains 9 long-term missions. Among them, for example, the demographic change, the growth of smart entrepreneurship, extending healthy life expectancy, preserving and diverse natural environment. So there are others, just to list. And solutions to these missions can only be sought by integrating different fields. Estonia's sustainable resilience does not depend only on new efficient technologies that generate renewable energy or capture carbon emissions, but also a dialogue and the creativity that is triggered by the interaction in different stakeholders. So we need to agree between the state, universities, and businesses on how to address states' development needs holistically, while avoiding setting quotas by research areas or by economic sectors. I offer a simplified example of how to approach specific development needs holistically. Solving environmental problems related to intensive agriculture cannot be left solely to agricultural universities and agricultural producers, as would be the first seemingly obvious choice. Ecologists, biologists, geologists, geneticists, molecular biologists, computer sciences, all this should be definitely also be involved. I'm sure this list can be continued, as many solutions may already exist in laboratories whose work at first glance would seem unrelated to agricultural or climate research. And in the following, I draw just a few examples on how researchers of various disciplines working at the University of Tartu, how they, in cooperation with the businesses and government agencies, already contribute to the solving some of the crucial development challenges described in the Estonia 2035 strategy. One example, smart governance. Our researchers use the big data which are generated by various Estonian public e-services, like internet voting, mobile parking, e-health, digital ID, e-residency, and also almost an online electricity consumption by families. To estimate the impact of all those services have the economically, politically, and socially. So that our spin-off companies have built a basis to create digital environment. Moreover, Dominic Unruh, the professor of cryptography at the University of Tartu, has been awarded an ERC Consolidator grant to protect e-services against the powerful quantum computers of the near future. Or second example, improving public health and extending the healthy life expectancy. Contrary to the global population growth trend, Europe's population is shrinking and it's aging. Increased use of digital technologies brings new opportunities and challenges for the healthcare systems. The new digital solutions enable the analysis of ever-increasing data, which can be used as a basis for the decision of health promotion, disease prevention, and also the healthcare largely. Estonia has set up a unique center e-health legal, organizational, and an IT infrastructure. And this includes a health information system that can be accessed at different levels by both health professionals, but also by the general public. In recent years, the transmission health information system data has increased, and data viewing has grown rapidly among the health professionals and also patients alike. However, attention must be paid to improve the information system by ensuring better data quality, structured and interconnected data. In this relation, I'd like to also pointing to the Estonian Genome Project, which will be probably a part of that huge infrastructure, and there is a very big information inside, which has to be also integrated into the e-services. So these few examples were to demonstrate the solutions to many of the challenges outlined in the Estonian long-term strategy already exist or are being developed at our university. It is now necessary to identify interdisciplinary collaborations to propose different alternatives and to determine which research directions need additional leverage in order to achieve the desired results. In doing so, it is important to consider which investments bring the greatest added value to the economy. As our national development needs largely coincide with the challenges facing Europe as a whole, it is also important to propose solutions that can also be used outside of Estonia. I'm confident that we, universities, research community, and businesses have potential for much more. Why research results are not applied sufficiently to policymaking? And what are the reasons for the low societal impact of science in Estonia? But I think it's valid also for other countries. In our example, the 1/3 of Estonian public research funding, which is about 70 million euros, is distributed between the ministries responsible for the R&D orders required for the area of administration. But unfortunately, the outcome here depends on the capacity, interest, and priorities of each ministry. This has led to fragmented responsibilities and uneven capacities, which inhibits the societal impact of science and the application of research result in policy making. How to change this situation? How to choose priority topics? And whose responsibility should it be? I think that the European best practice, this is the 5 mission boards of Horizon Europe, provide us a good model to emulate on national level. These mission boards, each composed of 15 best experts in the field, are tasked with addressing major challenges the people of Europe are facing in finding innovative, research-based solutions to them. Their task is to formulate specific problems that can be solved within a given time frame, to propose for each development need objectives, expected impact, budget, and also the evaluation. In Estonia, we are currently in the middle of the discussions as to whether National Missions Board should best fulfill their role either at the government office, Estonian Research Council, or at the Ministry of Education and Research. Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, the challenges described above are truly global. They affect societies in the world regardless of location. However, we as a small nations are further confronted with the specific development challenges of our own. These are common for both Estonia and Latvia. So to conclude my presentation, I come back to the specific role and task of the national universities. How do we face the challenges of the 21st century while preserving our unique culture and identity? Paradoxically, our struggle to preserve cultural identity and originality serves a global purpose of preserving the world's cultural diversity, which is as important as protecting the diversity of our natural environment. However, it is purely our responsibility. No one develops our culture and language for us. We have to do it just ourselves. Hence, the mission of the University of Tartu as a national university, which is, I quote, our current development strategy, is to ensure the continuity of Estonian intellectuals and language and culture, and to contribute to the development of education, research and technology, and other creative activities throughout the world. At Tartu, we are of opinion that there is no intrinsic conflict between the different roles of national university. Rather, the opposite. It can fulfill its mission only if it covers a wide range of disciplines and acts as both as national university and international university, and an economic and social developer. I wish the University of Latvia, as well as the University of Tartu and other small nations' universities, strength and determination in carrying out this mission. And please allow me to end by inviting you all to Tartu on December 1st to join us in celebrating the century of our university as Estonian National University. Vivat, crescat, floreat, universitas latviensis.
Professor Asser spoke about the various challenges a national university faces and also outlined some of the ways that have been used at Tartu to address those challenges. And what struck me was this reference to the oft-cited paradox that universities need to educate for jobs that have not been created yet. This certainly is a very risky enterprise, and I'm glad that our next speaker is a seasoned expert in probability theory and risk analysis, and that he may share his experience, how these uncertainties are dealt with at Vytautas Magnus University in Kaunas, Lithuania. So, ladies and gentlemen, Rector of Vytautas Magnus University, Professor Juozas Augutis.
Thank you. Your Magnificence, Rectors, dear guests of this special occasion, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Mūs vieno kopējais gars un vienas asinis, or as we say in Lithuanian, mūs vienyje bendra dvasia ir vienas kraujas. We are united by a shared spirit and one blood. There is a long and amazing story behind the sentence that can describe the relationship between our respective countries and universities. And we can all be grateful for it to no one else but the students of the University of Latvia. In 1922, Vytautas Magnus University celebrated its 10th anniversary of establishment, and fellow Latvian students presented their Lithuanian colleagues with a plate featuring the very same words. It hung in the aula of the university until the Second World War, when it disappeared in the historic tempest. But this word did not stop ringing in our ears, and this picture I have found in the archives. Try to show. Oh, sorry. This word have inspired our nation and academic communities to stand together through many traumatic and tragic moments of our history, and we know this connection will continue into hopefully a brighter and better future. Today, while we congratulating the University of Latvia with this solid anniversary, our community of the university, students and teachers, would like to once again remind everyone of our unity. And we hope that you will find a place for this plate, not as a sign of has was been, but as a sign what our future will be. We are used to measure our time in centuries, but when nowadays so much can happen in a year, a month, or even in a day, what does it mean for the university to reach its honorable anniversary of 100 years? Needless to say, it is now something completely different from what it was in the very beginning, when it started from an idea, when the country understood how important it is for them to have their own institution of higher education, and what does it entail, how it brings together the most enlightened people of their time and consolidates their potential. Life of any university is closely related to the historical developments. When the walls collapsed and the entire world opened in front of us, we have become fascinated by the idea that we can establish partnerships with American, Asian, or other universities around the world. And the great sea of opportunities, we sometimes forgot those very close to us who share so many similar and unique turns of history, those who can understand what we are going through, what challenges we experience, and that we should join our efforts and share our experience with others. Just 30 years ago, together with fellow Estonians, we joined in the long life chain to show that people and solidarity are above regimes. The Baltic chain, also known as the Baltic Way, has become a great example not only for Europeans, but our friends from faraway places, even Hong Kong too. But getting back to my question, where do 100 years bring a university? To the future, of course, if it is willing to change, adapt, and react. While at the beginning it was a driving force of changes, the cradle of intellectuals and shapers of their countries and its progress, now the impact is more subtle, yet far as reaching. History always reminds us about the possible failures and victories. Because of this, today is a good moment to rethink the role of universities in the society for the future. We live in the age marked by the ton of anti-democratic and populistic movements. The important feature of universities to be a forum of diverse ideas that are discussed and peacefully argued about It is increasingly under attack. So it's not surprises the world's oldest academic institutions is facing serious challenges and is looking for its space, role, and voice in the constantly changing world. Because of this, today I want to focus not on the technologies that in our day and age sometimes seems to be recklessly worshipped, but turn back to the importance of value, moral, and social responsibility. In my view, universities should be perceived as communities where leaders value and promote good relationship between people. Leaders of higher education need to promote a culture of collaboration and solidarity, because the spirit of education is not about the measurements and competitions, but it is about cooperation, sharing, and exchanging ideas. We need a culture that is friendly, open, and rewards generosity. We now see tendencies to establish a more network and ecological relation between the university and society, which has been referred to as the beginning of the academic citizenship or ecological university. In this kind of university, staff and students, education developers and teachers would work together in partnerships to co-create societal values and future knowledge. In this form, there lies the potential to create a future university through inviting students, society, industry, government, and the public to participate in new idea of the university. In this participation, the future university and society become connected into something that thinks, acts, and lives together. In order to achieve this mode, the university and society need to be integrated into each other to such extent that they recognize each other as part of the same ecological system and strengthen sustainability of its infrastructure. Because of this, and even more than before, different people already articulate the value of liberal arts education. Likewise, educating good citizens has long been a pillar of educational institutions across the globe, helping youth learn to serve their communities and become active global citizens. I believe that the university will remain a unique place dedicated to preparing students to understand, as well as influence, the diverse social forces that shape our lives. There are alarming voices that remind us about the climate changes. We must fight it immediately, wasting no time. Unfortunately, the efforts remain fragmented and isolated, yet nothing works in isolation. This issue is also related to sustainable development of our planet and what holds it back, including inequality, biodiversity loss, and the challenging of reskilling in the face of automation, as well as the global government, cybersecurity, food system, and the future of the financial system, to name a few. In this context, the university should also play a very active role. And it is not only research I am talking about. We need to speak out loud, as Greta Thunberg, the little girl from Sweden did, like the voice of the young people who will inherit the world and its problem. You're never too small to make a difference, she keeps repeating. We are here to talk on how we can increase our potential by joining our efforts and discussing university challenges of our future. What are the problems and possible solutions? How much is already done and what is in our hands? To quote Mr. Michael Higgins, the president of Ireland, an honorary doctor of our university, the future of Europe cannot rest on a limited conversation between the strongest, nor, I should add, the most proximate. I am very glad that we follow this principle in practice as much as in theory and can discuss our regional perspective as well as the global trends. In this time of great transformation, we need to adapt and change how we teach and what we teach. But it's also important that certain principles remain universal. good understanding of historical, culture, and philosophical context, and the knowledges of psychology, sociology, sciences, and other fields that uncover tendencies underlying the relationship among people or global processes, solving moral dilemmas and challenging stereotypes. Now it is time to repeat again. How significant is a universal education that promotes openness? Only a well-educated, open and critically thinking person can resist manipulation, look deep into the issues, evaluate the context, and make their own judgment. For that reason, education in general is as important as ever, and universities remain places where personal and civil awakening of young people takes place. While we question the purpose of the university, we cannot forget that it's what we see it to be. That yes, sometimes we get lost among the buzzwords, rankings, and unrealistic expectations, but it's also an amazing platform for all sorts of amazing initiatives we make them to be. Vytautas Magnus University is also on the brink of the century. In 2022, we'll celebrate the establishment of the University of Lithuania, and we'll have to ask similar questions from where we have arrived and where we are heading. And you, our dear colleagues, are invited to this dialogue because I do believe that we are heading in one direction. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, there are a few minutes left in this session, and I'd like to take advantage of that and open the floor for questions, comments, or suggestions to our panelists. There are two microphones, one here closer to the speakers and one in the back. So if you would like to ask a question or make a comment, if you could identify yourself and ask. Say. Anyone? Yep.
Is it working?
It is.
It is. Good. Thank you. Geoffrey Bolton from the University of Edinburgh. I, too, was taken by the comment that our chairman was taken by, and that is that we're now preparing students for jobs that don't yet exist. If they don't yet exist, and if we don't know what they are, then how should we educate them? Because certainly in science, technology, engineering, medicine, we've been very prescriptive about our education. It's been very highly prescribed. Yet we see with the digital revolution that the world is changing at a formidable rate. How should we cope with it?
It is. Can I speak from here? Is it working? Good. Well, I think despite all the changes, these elements of the knowledge remain important. But probably the role of personality will be even more important. A personality which is more adaptable to the ever-changing labor market, which means educating the so-called soft skills, social skills, how language skills, digital skills, entrepreneurial skills above all, which means that we have to educate students to find their place in an ever-changing environment. They have to rely on their own personal characteristics, and we have to develop their personal characteristics, which means that universities, again, must cultivate personal development, individual personal development, just like before, ages before. So we have to reinvent the Respublika, of the university citizens, staff and students as well. I know that it is very difficult because now the circumstances are totally different than it was several centuries ago. But I think, at least in spirit, we have to pay more attention to our students. It's not a knowledge factory anymore. We've just went beyond this phase of the higher education, and we have to focus on the spirit, the soul, and the heart of the students again.
Society. And that's true that we don't know actually, there's no ideas what will be, for example, what kind of jobs will be in 10 years since now, and also the inventions which will be. And I'm very much agree that we have to prepare for our students just to prepare, to be prepared for to manage with the different social aspects, and this is a crucial probably in the coming years.
Any other comments from the panelists? Okay, thank you. Other questions? Please.
Ineta Dabašinskienė, Vice Rector Vytautas Magnus University. I'm just wanted to thank all the speakers, but still would like to address question most probably to European Commission representative, Vice President and the Commissioner. Various discourses have been dominating by the keywords like economic growth, innovation, smart technologies, STEAM, competition. I'm just wondering about the future of Europe and, of course, the globe. We want Europe to be very competitive, and we emphasize these words a lot. But Professor Sasso just mentioned about the Europe that we live in peace, and I would add that peace and stability in the region is very fragile, and we see all the global turbulences in terms of political issues. I'm just wondering whether the Commission, and having in mind the programs, the humanistic approach towards innovation and society, whether there is an emphasis for humanities, for social sciences, because we see for Horizon and other programs that something else is leading the research. And we know that in academia, people are measured all the time. Our professors and students live in a high anxiety, uncertainty, and we know from different reports that the level of psychological stability of our students and academic community in general is very, well, it's not stable in general, that we see the high level of depression, suicide, and so on and so on. So it's global tendency. What would you suggest, or whether you have some ideas for those issues to be solved, that a lot of academicians think that some other feature should be emphasized, that humanistic and humanities should start to dominate the discourse, but not competition, technologies, and so on. Thank you.
Well, I think it is extremely difficult to strike balance between different areas of the knowledge. And I definitely agree with you that humanities play an important role in personal development and also in the everyday life of higher education and the outcomes of the higher education as well. What we've done is a recommendation to the member states, which was adopted unequivocally by the member states and the Education Council on the teaching of the European values the history of the European integration and the historical backgrounds of the EU. Probably this is one piece of how the humanities can contribute to a broader or more comprehensive knowledge. And while we are talking about the importance of the skills in higher education, we never neglect the humanities, because humanities can also teach skills. Skills are not only technical skills. Philosophy can be also a skills-oriented discipline if it's not concentrating exclusively the pure theoretical knowledge, but also the adaptation of the philosophical knowledge into our everyday life, and how a philosophy or philosophical knowledge can contribute to a personal wholeness, entity, and the development of the personality. So I would say that we have to keep the balance with all areas, because it's been developed not by accident. I mean, European civilization is 1,000 or several thousand years long evolution of the knowledge, of our brain, of our culture and everything. So we have to protect all the elements, but we have to adapt them into our present-day conditions. And of course, the European Commission is concentrating mostly on the economic side of all these integrations. My role has been to complement these efforts of the single market, the European competition, and so on and so forth. My contribution was to add some educational part of that. But, for instance, a healthy citizen with a good democratic instinct can be an asset from the point of view of the competitiveness. So it's a very complex one, and I definitely think that the humanities had its own place in that complexity.
Maybe if I can add a couple of points to this question. Well, first of all, of course, we also need to look at what is a future of economy, and as we were discussing, a future of economy will be increasingly knowledge-based. So also as a Europe, also as a region here, we are confronted with this question. If we want to be at forefront of this technological development, that's the only way also to stay at the forefront of economic development. That's the only way to stay as a Europe, one of the most prosperous places in the world, and to protect our model of social market economy. That's, I think, what we all want. And for this, like we were or not, we will help to invest more in innovations and skills, and including on the STEM, what I was calling STEM education. And I agree fully with what Commissioner Navracsics says, that it's not to neglect the humanities. Of course, for universities, it's always to find the right balance. And I was mentioning some facts with which personally I'm not very pleased if I see that Latvia, in terms of, for example, those who are finishing studies in mathematics, share of those people who are finishing mathematics is in the last place in the EU. I think that's not a good place to be for the future competitiveness of our country, and we should be looking at this and trying to seek the right balance.
Just a very brief comment from as being a part of the comprehensive universities. The humanities and social sciences, in my view, and that's not only my view, but it's largely accepted also at our university, so it definitely will increase. So I can give you two examples. For example, we are facing the number of different aspects we have to solve with the genetics, human genetics. So there are so many components that ethical issues you can't imagine what may go. Or the other example is the artificial intelligence. If we go, for example, to the military component, so there are, well, hundreds, thousands of unanswered questions even now. Well, so we know, so that's the role of the humanities will increase. Like the colleagues say, that I can't say the proportion at the moment.
Maybe I would like to add some. If you look to the beginning of the higher education, you will see that all sciences was in one together, and we had maybe 50 years ago, in approximately we have a massive higher education. Now we come back to the individual higher education, and one of the ways to solve this problem between different sciences is so-called liberal arts and education, when they come back to the mix of different sciences, as colleague said, and I think that it's one of the ways to solve this problem.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I must say that we have run out of the time for this particular session, and now we have scheduled a coffee break, and some coffee and some snacks will be served downstairs, and I'm sure there will be someone who will guide us and lead us to the coffee break. But for now, I would like to thank our panelists, and I kindly invite you to return at 3:30. Thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we will continue our symposium, and I see that people are coming back from the coffee break, so I'm sure there will be more of us in the audience. But now I would like to give floor to Professor Geoffrey Bolton from University of Edinburgh, who is not only an accomplished environmental scientist who has earned many recognitions for his research work, but also Professor Bolton is someone who has been very much involved in the administrative part of higher education and research. He has served on various advisory councils and also has worked also with the British Prime Minister on these issues. So with not much further ado, I would like to welcome Professor Geoffrey Bolton.
So you mustn't be embarrassed, there are so few of you. I gave a talk in a village hall last winter in the Highlands of Scotland, and there were only 4 of us, but it was really enjoyable, so don't worry. So I have a complicated title, as you can see, but in fact Mr. Navracic gave me the title I really want to talk to when he said, "We must pay more attention to our students." And I suppose that's the core of what I want to say. I'm going to make some broad generalizations supported by some statistics, but also a lot of experience of teaching and researching and giving science advice. I'm going to talk about the past and the present and the future. But remember, I'm a geologist, and therefore the future isn't my subject. And the key question is, which of the essential things from the past do we need to hold on to? And which are the things that we can dispense with? And in that regard, it's very important to remember how unique universities are as institutions. It's been calculated in Europe that there are about 65 institutions that date from before the year 1600, doing very much the same thing as they always have in the same place. And of those, there are bodies like the papacy, the English monarchy, and the Bank of Siena, although the Bank of Siena may not have long to go, but 56 of them are universities. So we're very durable institutions. We've faced complicated futures and difficult futures before, and we've survived. The crucial thing is we have to be clever in assessing how the fundamentals that underpin what we do need to be adapted from generation to generation such that they may seem to bring benefit to the societies which they serve. So we are resilient, and the question is, how are we going to be resilient in future? So let's start with this gentleman. We always do. This is Alexander von Humboldt, who produced, if you like, either the founding ethos of the modern European university, or some might say the founding myth of the university. A community of scholars and students engaged in a common task. Well, it's wonderful when that happens. It doesn't always. Teaching, research, and learning are inseparable. I'm not sure. Concerned with disinterested pursuit of the truth? Sometimes, maybe. They're still challenging assertions and statements. And it's interesting to see how the period just before the great growth of universities, which took place in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, how people thought of the role of the universities when in several countries there were reports which asked the question, should there be an extension of higher education, and if so, why? And these were the reasons that were produced by the Robbins report in the UK, in Great Britain, in 1963, and they really make interesting reading. The first one, to promote the general powers of the mind, to produce not mere specialists, but rather cultivated men and women. That's not a sentence you would often hear now. To teach skills, of course, to maintain research in balance with teaching, whatever that means, and to promote common standards of citizenship. And they also wrote in their report this sentence at the bottom. These are principles that most people of liberal mind will stand behind even 50 years later. Well, do they? This is Peter Drucker. Peter was an Austrian-American business management and strategy specialist, a brilliant man and a brilliant mind. And in the early 70s, he enunciated this idea of the knowledge economy, when the basic economic resource is no longer capital, nor land, nor labor, it is and will be knowledge. And of course, those people, university leaders, who thought that their institutions encapsulated knowledge, thought, good, that's it. We're the places where this great productivity and innovation in applying that knowledge will be driven from. And many ministers of industry and finance in many countries accepted that as a logic for part of the growth of universities that we saw in subsequent years. So the graph on the left, which you can probably barely see this one, it shows this extraordinary expansion of enrollments in universities globally from round about 20% of the population in 1970, or to the age cohort in 70, to about 40% globally at the present day, with some societies topping 50%. What's also interesting is this line, this dashed line, which shows the ratio of staff to students. And what you will see is there's very little change. There's a slight rise, but very little change. Isn't that wonderful? Well, I'm afraid no, it isn't, because that refers to total staff. If you ask the question, what proportion of those staff spent their time either teaching or supporting teaching, the answer is a very much smaller number. And if you do the student-staff ratio on the basis of those who are actually involved in education, then it looks like that. There's been a dramatic diminution of the number of staff per student, if you like. And what is also obvious, and that is that things have changed dramatically. First of all, 40 years ago, the great challenge was to get into university. If you got in, you'd probably got a job for life. Now the competition is so great that the great challenge is getting out of university into employment. And of course, we've seen a great deal of inflation. There's also a big impact on student choice. Rightly or wrongly, students have been persuaded that the sciences, medicine, engineering are the places to go and not the humanities, rightly or wrongly. There's also a new problem of exclusion. 50 years ago, when only 5% of the age cohort went to university, that was just another special group. It didn't really matter. But when 50% of the population, the age cohort, go to university, 50% don't. They are obviously excluded. And my sense is that some of the populism we now see is a component part of that is actually the sense of exclusion that belongs to that group who have not been participants. The other thing that's rather obvious, and in fact the statistics behind this graph show it, is that teaching has been replaced by research, displaced. The change of balance has been extraordinary. And my view is very simple, it's diminished education. Here's an interesting statistic from the USA, where we see this student contact, the real student contact hours, almost halving in the 40 years up to 2000. Those are quite dramatic numbers. Magna Carta Universitatensis, a Magna Carta for the universities, was created in in 1988. And its three essential pillars were that research and teaching are inseparable and must be the basis for the status of staff, that research is a vital engine of national prosperity, and research and teaching must be independent, I'm afraid, what it says under there, of political influence. Now, it's interesting that over the last 10 years, there have been quite a large number of studies of the relationship between teaching and research. The conclusions are obvious and very, very clear, and that is there is no relationship between the quality of teaching and the quality of research. The unity of research and teaching, as said here, is a pure invention. It's a myth. Many of you will know that that's true. The best teachers, who we've now largely got rid of because they're not research intent, not research active, are the ones with a broad perception of the horizons of knowledge that could help the students move across that horizon. The last thing you want is someone who's dying to get back to the laboratory to look at some enzyme on a DNA strand, or go back to the library to investigate Augustine's latest letters. There's a real contrast, and I think personally it's very dramatic. These were questionnaires that were put to academics both in UK and the US in the late 60s in the UK and the early 70s in the US. And amongst the questions that were asked were two very simple ones. First of all, what do you call yourself when you're in a social setting outside the university? And the answer was very simple: university teacher. Now, it's decades since I've heard that phrase. That's not the phrase that comes to mind as the index of status in a university. And the second question was, how important is research to universities? Look at those numbers. They're really quite extraordinary, and they're very similar in the US. And yet we somehow have this strange view that going back in time, that universities have been overflowing with research and its inspiration. Not true. And now, of course, we speak of teaching loads, as if teaching is a virtue, and the high point of the career of a professor, mind you, someone who professes, is they can buy themselves out of their teaching so they don't have to teach anymore. So something has changed. An index of the changing perspective. This year, the Deutsches Forschungsgemeinschaft gave the title University of Excellence to a series of German universities. The criteria are there. They're all to do with research and governance. None of them mention education or teaching. I wonder what Alexander von Humboldt would have thought of that. It seems to me this is a profound betrayal of the German university ideal, and the DFG ought to be ashamed of themselves, and I've said so to their director. And then here's the chief scientist of Australia. The universities have huge potential to play a central role as dynamos of growth in the innovation process and to be huge generators of wealth. That's a very, very strong statement. It's a reflection of the way in which the balance has shifted. But here are some doubts. A very senior businessman, the chief executive of a number of major British companies. We shouldn't foist on university a task which they may be ill-equipped to deliver, which, if too actively pursued, could damage their capacity, what they are uniquely able to deliver. So that's an interesting warning voice. Of course, in this era, if we are to deliver the products of research into industry and into the public domain in ways that are going to be creative, then we do need to be highly organized. And of course, one of the consequences of that has been an increasing trend for very strong governance within universities. The idea somehow of the community of scholars has been pushed to one side. These were recommendations made to UK university heads in 1985, and you see strong top-down leadership management, universities to be treated as a private sector enterprise. One shouldn't forget that here we are these institutions that have a long history, and we're told, ironically, that we should model ourselves on companies that generally don't have a lifetime more than a decade. You know, they're like the flicker of a candle flame compared with universities. Now, metrics, how you measure things, is crucial. You may not be able to see this slide very well, but I'll try. First of all, I give you as witness Robert McNamara. Robert McNamara had been the president of Ford, and a very successful one, the Ford Motor Company. He enunciated what's been called McNamara's law. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. He was made US Secretary of Defense in the early 60s, and so he looked for a metric to determine whether or not the US was winning the Vietnam War, which was in full flood at that moment, with McNamara having principal responsibility for the performance of American military. And so he used the body count. And the body count increased the fatalities amongst American military and Vietnamese citizens enormously, and yet the Americans lost the war. The problem was he wasn't listening to Goodhart's law. Richard Goodhart was a very well-known economic statistician. His argument is, when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. Why? Because we game it. So we have our metrics. The metrics of academic excellence for a researcher or an academic are the number of publications and number of citations. Because those are key criteria for the performance of academics and their promotion and the like, then the outcomes are, in order to satisfy the demand for publication by academics, there are now 30,000 journals worldwide, some of dubious quality. We have 3 million research papers every year, of which less than 5% receive significant citation. My view is that that reflects a mountain of literally useless research. It reflects a misdirection of public funds, which could be better employed giving our students a decent education. And what it's done is to make research the enemy of education rather than its necessary support. And of course, it's also produced at a time when digitization has reduced costs in almost every industry. The only exception is the scientific publishing industry, which has increased its prices at greater than inflation on an annual basis. So if we look at the behavioral changes, and I look as a scientist at some of my colleagues, and I'm sorry to write this, but these very drivers of behavior drive some of my colleagues away from the attitudes and habits of behavior which are the proper behavior of a scientist. One should be skeptical of results rather than selling results, as increasingly happens. We should publish negative results rather than push them to one side. We need to replicate our results. The essence of modern science for the last 300 years has been giving your evidence open to scrutiny, such that the relationship between evidence and concept can be tested, observations or experiments can be replicated. Over the last decade, by my count, there have been at least 11 major reviews into the extent to which large numbers of publications in key areas of science can be replicated. In no occasion, in none of those cases, has it been possible to replicate the results of more than 25% of the work. In other words, we're doing something really serious, which is undermining both the credibility and the capacity of science to deliver worthwhile results. And of course, for our institutions, we have these marvelous, the market quotation, the international ranking tables. They commit all the statistical errors that we try hard to have our students not commit. And they also have led us to an unprecedented bout of university boasting, which is at times amusing, but at times tragic. And this is one little error they commit. You know, we're told they can rank universities from 1 to 1,000. And of course, the rankings have some error bars. They've obviously never heard of Carl Friedrich Gauss, who would say that anyone who comes up with that conclusion has produced a corrupt method. But the really bad news is the simplistic interpretation of Peter Drucker's comment about the knowledge economy has led us into some severe difficulties. This is McKinsey Global. McKinsey are a highly respected group that undertake major analyses of industrial productivity and the like. Even in the USA, major economic growth directly through licensing, spin-out, start-up and stimulation research is and always has been a pipe dream. So what role do universities have in innovation? Well, this diagram might be a little distant for you, but every year we produce 1.7 million bachelor's graduates in scientific subjects in Europe. About 100,000 of them go on to undertake PhDs. 50% of those people on PhDs leave for jobs outside science after or during the time they're completing their PhD. By the time this process has continued, we've got a very small cohort of long-term researchers. So how is it that innovation in society is dependent on this tiny cohort of researchers? What about all those? My view is it is almost laughable that we should suppose that there is this hot pipeline through research to direct impact in innovation, in which we use the word innovation in a narrow sense as means of selling goods and services to industry. Surely it's that 1.7 million, if they had a good education, going out into an enormously diverse series of locations in society. They're going to be the major innovators, whether it's social innovation, commercial innovation. You look at the great commercial innovators of the present day, they all left university after the first degree. That doesn't mean to say that research doesn't matter, by the way. And the other problem, I think, where the modern university is letting itself down is, where is our corporate voice? We've just had these amazing citizens' marches. Our academics have contributed to this smashing, terrific poster here saying it's warming, it's us, we're sure, it's bad, but we can fix it. And yet, corporately, our universities and their various groupings, what do? We go to the European Commission and say, give us more money. Or we say how wonderful we are. But actually, there is no university presence in any of these domains. Another one is we're faced with this extraordinary revolution in communication and knowledge. Our universities as corporate institutions aren't there. Our academics are, but not our universities. And I couldn't resist this photograph with Rembrandt's great masterpiece, The Night Watch, sitting behind, and all the young students looking at their iPhones. It's very much a postmodern world, more information, less knowledge, if you like. So where are our universities? And my view is that corporately, we're in a bubble that's floating free of the major way in which our academics are engaging with international bodies that are representative of the United Nations and elsewhere. The universities as corporate bodies together could play a fundamental role in international affairs at the moment, and we're not, we're failing. So what's the good news? Well, I think this is the good news. That's, at the top is Drew Faust, who stood down last year as president of Harvard. A university is about learning that molds a lifetime, learning that transmits the heritage of millennia, learning that shapes the future. And this wonderful phrase from Ben Okri, the task of the university is to set up its students for the act of self-discovery. So my conclusions are these. There are three great delusions. That's Canova's three graces. I'd call them delusions. Maybe they are delusions anyway, as sculptors. First of all, that research is inseparable from teaching. Not true. Secondly, research is a direct driver of economic growth. Of course it's important, but for different reasons. It's not a direct driver, and actually never has been. And thirdly, that universities are best run by businesses. If they are, then all that matters is the intelligence of the man at the top, or the woman at the top, rather than the collective intelligence of those that lie beneath. My view is the crucial challenge for us now is twofold. It's firstly developing the skills and the talents and even the genius of the next generation by giving them a better education, not making it a set of skills. We heard this morning that comment about the jobs that we're training our students for don't yet exist. How do you do that? Actually, one of the easy answers is you do it through a classical liberal education. It involves mathematics, philosophy, and a language or two. And the second one is actively acting as a body that does what we say we do, but it rarely do. And that is creating and advocating the ideas, the knowledge, and the wisdom that society around us needs for betterment and survival. I think we can do it. We've done it in the past. Let's do it again. Let's get down to business. Thank you.
I think this was an excellent continuation of the discussion that began in the first part of the symposium when we tried to, well, at least we tried to tackle the question of what do you teach if you need to prepare for future. It seems that part of the answer is to be found in the area of humanities. And that is why I'm very pleased to present the next speaker, who is Professor Indra Karapetjana, who is the linguist, who is linguist by education. And what is perhaps equally exciting is that she has recently been elected to the position of the Dean of the Faculty of Humanities at the University of Latvia. Professor, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. Before my talk, I would like to thank Professor Mužnieks and Professor Druviete, our administration, for the granted opportunity to speak to such audience today. It's a great pleasure and honor. I would like to start by referring to a well-known classic quote by George Orwell. All animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. I used this quote in my discourse analysis class last week, discussing how actually language can be used and is used to manipulate society. And at that point, I thought that this famous line is in line with what sometimes we think about how the humanities are treated nowadays. Interestingly enough, although a formal acknowledgement of the role of the humanities exists, and we could hear that in the morning session by our distinguished president and other distinguished people, if the government, companies, or even majority of society are asked about the parity of the humanities with other sciences, they would confirm that all sciences are equally important. But their words and deeds do not seem always sincere, since we are immediately asked to present arguments in support of the humanities to survive the current budgetary and political landscape. Today, we can witness a global situation when significant investments in research are being made in the sciences, and the polarized debate about the value of STEM and non-STEM subjects may seem rather disturbing to some people. Nevertheless, academics all over the world have found themselves defending the relevance of the humanities in education and research. It is not simple to demonstrate the ways in which the humanities contribute to the benefit of society. In short, the humanities study human culture, past and present, focusing on interpretation and critical evaluation. They help us see where we are going. So I will also be referring to the past, present, and future, the same as the previous speaker. Let us start with the past, very briefly. I will not make a discovery here by claiming that the emergence of modern science in Europe evolved from Renaissance culture and is inseparable from the study of the humanities. Let us remind ourselves about just one key figure in the history of science, Galileo Galilei. The Galileo we celebrate today had enjoyed broad education, from humanistic training to natural sciences, astronomy, and mathematics. But it is the examination of ancient texts, language, and literature of his time which had contributed to pushing Galileo actually thinking outside the box, as we would say nowadays. The University of Latvia, founded 100 years ago, was based on the principles of the equality of natural sciences, humanities, and technical sciences, which also reflected society's attitude of the time. Being the heart of the university, the faculty and students of the humanities enjoyed parity with other sciences. Now let us turn to the present. Today, we regularly hear about lack of specialists in technical fields and about initiatives from the EU governments and companies to expand STEM programs. This was also referred to by our distinguished commissioners. The humanities often are seen as expensive luxuries in today's world and forced to make a case for their continued existence. Society might feel that sometimes the humanities are left on life support. It's high time our society realized that the humanities are not just a luxury to be served as a dessert in the halls of higher education, but an essential part of science and well-rounded education. In 2019, Latvian Academy of Sciences published a report on the role of the humanities and social sciences in the development of state and society, claiming that the understanding of the role of these sciences has improved in EU institutions and Latvia. A reference to Horizon 2020 and its successor Horizon Europe is made. The Horizon 2020 document emphasizes the cooperation between STEM and non-STEM subjects and the necessity to break the classical divide. And although it is claimed that humanities are not, quote, merely as an add-on element, but as a core element, quote, finished, the emphasis is on horizontal integration and interdisciplinary research. At the same time, the document admits that the humanities remain severely underrepresented in the projects. However, humanities research has a value in and of itself. Even if it leads to other benefits, it should also be pursued for its own sake. In line with European documents and the EU support of STEM subjects, Latvia has formulated 9 priority directions in science, recognizing also the importance of the humanities. To remain competitive and create jobs, science and technology are crucial components of today's life, but so are the humanities. There are 2 sides of every story, and this view can be supported by referring to 2 well-known entrepreneurs. Bill Gates emphasized work-related learning that produces jobs. The New York Times said, quote, if this was not music to the ears of advocates of the humanities, they quickly found a soulmate in Steve Jobs, unquote. Steve Jobs stressed the link between the humanities and innovation, suggesting that it is, again, quote, Apple's DNA, that is, its technology married with the humanities, that yields the results that yields us the results that makes our heart sing, unquote. Now I'd like to draw your attention just to some aspects or fields the humanities can benefit society. First, social value. The humanities enhance our ability to clearly communicate our viewpoints as well as understand different religions and viewpoints even when we disagree with them. They ease communication with society. They help create tolerance and understanding. Literature can help us develop empathy, as only literature offers practice to empathize. Linguistics help us understand the value of minority languages and dialects. Secondly, preserving cultural memory and identity. The humanities enable citizens to understand and promote one's own culture, as well as understand other cultures. Preservation of linguistic culture is another category to be mentioned. With a growing dominance of English in the language of science, the question of the development of national languages of science has become topical. And here, the expertise of humanities researchers is obviously relevant. Again, in the morning session, we could hear how important the national language which is Latvian language in our country is, but as I said previously, sometimes it seems that this is just a politeness. The same applies in the area of security. Wars or hybrid wars require innovative thinking. Professor Druviete has remarked that the humanities inform society of how to tell fake news from real news. Critical thinking skills instilled by the humanities are even more vital in a time of intensifying misinformation on social media and the internet. Thirdly, humanities research has economic value. Businesses need to understand the cultures in which they operate. Also, the use of language is important in this regard. Economic impact of linguistics has played a key role, bringing insights into the fields of information and computer science. For example, the insight of linguistics into the systematic nature of language has informed the creation of computer languages. Today, we also speak about digital humanities. We can also mention tourist industry and other industries where we can contribute. Employment of graduates would be the last point I would like to mention because this issue has been brought up several times. Humanities disciplines prepare students for the world of work, whatever job they might do, and this is true. Humanities students have learned how to work with large bodies of text and information, how to use language to persuade, to communicate. They can also evaluate and construct arguments. And I can go on mentioning other, let's say, skills and qualities the humanities graduates possess. But one of the most important ones to me seems that the humanities graduates, they are ready to learn, to continue learning when they embark on some jobs. Also, employer surveys in many countries, including Latvia, emphasize that they need graduates. Of course, they need graduates with technical expertise, but they also need well-rounded individuals with a holistic education who can take on complex problems, understand the needs and desires of and motivations of others, and of course, they are ready to learn. Future. Nowadays, when the humanities are being asked to carry a heavier financial burden than they can, when the government has decided that universities must justify their existence in economic terms, and when the branches of science that bring immediate benefit are highly valued, we must remember that it is the presence of the humanities that allows the university to think better of itself and to imagine itself to be above commercial benefits. The humanities do not need to make a case within the university because the humanities are the heart of the university. I fully support the view expressed by our philosopher Skaidrīta Lasmane in the journal Domuzīme, where she argues that the humanities can be discussed from 4 perspectives. First, we can continue complaining about the lack of recognition and financial support. Secondly, we can continue searching for research project funding. Thirdly, we can present up-to-date arguments in support of the humanities and protection against commercial short-sightedness. Fourth, but we can also critically reassess the humanities and change ourselves to meet the present-day realities. I would say we need all 4 perspectives to discuss the place of the humanities. In our technology-focused world, the humanities are needed more than ever to provide balance. And this is with what I'd like to finish my talk. Thank you very much for your attention.
And the third presenter today is a historian of education who has published widely on history of education on both sides of the Atlantic, and who has also applied this knowledge to the university management or the practical side of the education, and who has served as the Deputy Chancellor of the Catholic University of Leuven. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark de Pepe.
Thank you very much. I feel honored to be here. I have a talk in the classical sense. The title is University non moritur, and I have added a subtitle, The Promotion of Critical Thinking Through Historical Consciousness and Research in the Cultural History of Education. Universitas non moritur, university does not die, is indeed the title that I, as a historian of education, have chosen for this speech here in Riga at the occasion of the celebration of the centennial of the university. What do I mean by this claim? Certainly not that the university as an institution will necessarily continue to exist as it is. My approach is in fact more risky and perhaps not without any possible self-interest. It wants to stress the importance of critical thinking, conceived as the most crucial element of the so-called university spirit, which has traditionally been linked with ideas and concepts of Universitas, Bildung, Geisteswissenschaften, hermeneutics, and so on. To my mind, historical consciousness and historical research, also about education and universities, can be considered as a very good example of, and even as a metaphor for, all academic work in the humanities. But this does not mean that the old-fashioned assumption of the history, and the history of education in particular, have to be continued. Quite the contrary. Historical consciousness also means that we have to become aware about the uses, the misuses, and the abuses of the past in former times, as well as in the present. Obviously, when some of the old methodological challenges seem to re-emerge in the present-day mentality characterized by post-truth assumption, Trumpisms, and so-called fake news. At its inception in the 19th century, an educational training institute, History of Education, for instance, focused primarily on practical pedagogical purposes, such as drawing lessons, inspiration, and motivation from the big examples of the past. And as far as the educational theory was concerned, it provided normative ideas and values for the ideological and political justification of existing practices. Nowadays, remembrance education is very much in vogue. It aims at learning from a wrong past and only selects those facts that are useful to serve this final goal. It is my conviction that such a presentistic attitude cannot be considered as proper history, nor does it lead to critical thinking, as it is again inextricably linked with political discourse. In the research that I have developed with my colleagues and collaborators at the University of Leuven, we have strived from the outset towards a cultural historical understanding of the educational heritage, which has to be, above all, contextualized within its own time. Such a voyage of discovery into the past assumes, just like that into a foreign culture, a willingness to dialogue with the culture of the past. And there is no better place for such a dialogue than the university, as this institution began, in the words of my Cambridge friend and colleague David Bridges, as conversation. Admittedly, from the present, theoretical frameworks and conceptual keys are being developed with which the past can be interpreted and understood. But that is not yet the same as wanting to write a history that interferes with the present and explicitly has the intention of wanting to hazard our own way of being in the present. The dialogical relation with the past, proper to ever historiographical operation, wants, in my opinion, just the opposite, to let the past be fully the past. Therefore, over the course of the past decades, I myself, as well as the people of my research group, have attempted to demythologize the politico-ideological messages that often are underlying dearly cherished and comfortable interpretations. A good example of this might be the neoliberal idea of unbridled progress and innovation, which is to be found in the story of the longer the better, a discourse that serves the construction of handbooks on the development of several human sciences, including psychology, but also a story that leaves, after a more careful historical analysis, little room for triumphalism. Consequently, cultural historical researchers like me are not always the best speakers at jubilees and celebrations like today, because they do not necessarily say what partygoers or guests of honor want to hear. What comes to the surface of a demythologized approach is more disarming self-mockery and postmodern irony than the glorification of knowledge, science, education, universities, or whatever. In what follows, I want to avoid above all the trodden paths of such a traditional rhetoric, and there is for me only one way to do so, namely by reflecting on my own research on methodology. I realize that this may be boring for the audience, and I want to apologize for that, but there seems to be no alternative if I wish to promote critical thinking through historical consciousness and research in history. Since the arrival of modernity in the late 18th century, change became one of the hallmarks of society and had a radical effect in most areas of life. A new understanding of reality took shape, resulting from the experienced and permanently accelerating gap between past and present. Human life and society were no longer seen as virtually timeless and unchanging, but rather as processes involving motion, evolution, and even revolution, driven by an economic logic of capitalism in which time is money and money a scarce commodity. The utilitarian principle that there can be no excuse for losing time and money came to occupy center stage. At the same time, however, the capitalist system created a feeling of alienation and at times even unease and uncertainty. The wave of economic, social, and cultural change created a rift with the familiar world and brought with it loss of footing. This set the scene for a harking back to the past in numerous ways. It might have taken the form, for example, of a nostalgic, fervent, and comforting desire for the past, or of a historia magistrae vitae for the present, a past from which lessons could be learned, or a past recoverable through heritage to serve present political, social, and educational goals. But the relationship of the past to the present and to the future is infinitely more complex, and in no sense can it be conceived as linear or finalistic. Past and present are different worlds having different contexts. It is therefore impossible, if not senseless, to draw unequivocal lessons from the past. At the very most, the past can make us think through confrontation, dialogue, and conversation. It maybe offer some inspiration. But under no circumstance it is a book of ready-made answers, let alone recipes. The past always comes to us through historical representations and reconstructions. The past is, after all, reshaped in the present by historians and by society at large. Every society approaches the past from some perspective or other, then attempts to reconstruct it, and in doing so attribute meaning to it. A developed historical consciousness therefore learns to recognize the status of knowledge and uses of the past and learns to assess its value. It brings with it a sense of perspective, and relativism provides food for thought and creates agency, since it involves the very understanding that the present is not merely determined by the past, but on the contrary, that change and alternatives are possible. And this makes engagement for the future worldwide. In the end, people are historical beings. They are aware of their past. They store not only knowledge and experience of things that have happened through memory, but they incorporate these memories constantly in the living of their life. Judging by the flourishing remembrance sites on the internet, one might even say that remembering, individually as well as collectively, now appears to have become more important than writing history. Due to increasing globalization and associated migration flows, governments around the world give an ever more prominent role to the shared knowledge of the past for purposes of citizenship and identity formation. Almost everywhere, remembrance education and heritage education are propagated based on the appropriation of a shared history and common cultural values. This trend has also become the subject of a Ghanaian heritage industry and remembrance management, in which the involved actors search out on our behalf what needs to be preserved, what sites of our archaeological heritage are deserving of protection. This resolves our interaction with the past into a very instrumental event based on current objectives. Only those aspects of the past that are of service and use of today are retained, which leads not only to a highly selective, but a very contextless interaction with the past. Concern for heritage as well as the act of remembrance associated with it are, after all, mainly a strategy in and for the present. For historical researchers, the important task at this presentistic juncture is one of creating critical awareness of the interaction with the past. Their challenge is that of making the consumers of history, whether they be university students, secondary school pupils, or trainee teachers, or just citizens, aware of the dialectic of the pastness of the past with its inevitable presentness. Indeed, the phenomenon of history and heritage consumption is nothing new. It is clear that as regards the history of education, its heyday in the 19th century was due to the relationship with the formation of the nation-state, whereby the Third Republic in France can serve as a textbook example. That led to a given narrative, an intrinsic storyline about history conceived as having its own deterministic plan, its own causal relations and cohesion, which created a canon of survival with its own myths and heroes. The ideological framework of Marxism-Leninism was, of course, also a very good example of this. To learn to shatter and observe such processes is something what can be learned at universities. And the research of my Latvian colleague, Iveta Keštere, is a step in this direction. In an educational context, heritage and remembrance should not come to stand in the way of the desire for historical distance, but should themselves be made into an object of reflection, a kind of powerful meta-historical reflection in which professors, students, and ordinary citizens become aware of their grounding in temporality and spatiality, together with the importance of contemporary values and convictions for a better humanity they believe in. It is in this sense that my sincere wish for the future of the University of Latvia and its human sciences has to be interpreted. The wish for a better and a deeper historical consciousness, appreciating the critical interaction with the past in our own time. Cultural historical research, also cultural historical research about education, is, as I said, always a little disturbing because it does not avoid uneasy questions about the educational heritage. It shows the relativity of the highly strained and far removed from everyday reality rhetoric of educational work, as well as the complex and at times paradoxical, ironizing and problem-initiating outcomes of that work. Learning to live with such a plurality of insights and values, acquired through constantly changing perspectives and standpoints, better equips future teachers, educators, pedagogues, behavioral and social scientists to deal with the heterogeneity of wordplay and contradictory representations from the educational past. Consider the fierce debates on knowledge versus skills and attitudes as they took place the past 2 decades, or more recently, debates on ICT integration in education, to realize the necessity for a long-term view in order to develop a balanced opinion in these matters. Educational life, like politics, is not intrinsically ironic, but only ironic as the result of historical consciousness. That ironizing occurs through the understanding that the results of education usually differ dramatically from what was originally intended, just as the outcomes of educational policies can differ radically from the intentions that lay at their basis. Without historical consciousness, only the issues of the day remain. Historical understanding goes beyond the limited view of present time and holds open the door, albeit theoretically, to critical correction, which could involve cultivating the non-utilitarian. The added value of such an approach consists of nothing more than pure wisdom, which does not envision wagging a finger or providing moralizing ways of life and ignores the strict performance demands of learning objectives. Its critical surplus is situated on an other, a higher, a more abstract and de facto also more individual level. The lessons I have gradually learned from history are not so much based on the substantive, but more on the methodological level. Dialogue is not a question of entrenching oneself in the conviction that one is right, but of listening attentively to possibly new insights from a different point of view. Our opinion, our view, our philosophy of life, our truth, even based on historical or other research, is in fact not more than an offer that seeks to meet, to want to go alone with it because it may be catching or appealing. But we cannot make it catching on or appealing. We can only hope. The critical judgment cannot be enforced, not the direction in which it will go. We do not have the humanizing and emancipating effects of education under control. Nevertheless, we should never give up to confront the student as much as possible with different points of view in the hope that this can promote critical judgment. Willingness to listen to the other is the basic condition for inquisitiveness and tolerance. Certainly, in a societal context of the present day, it is of the utmost importance to learn to live with different ways of seeing. That is why I am and I will remain a strong advocate of university cooperation, not only in an international and intercultural sense, but also and especially in an interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary context. Learning to show respect for the different paradigms in the sciences should therefore be one of the most important attainment targets of any university education. And we can achieve this through diversity in research, but also through diversity in education. As far as the historical research and teaching is concerned, such an attitude does imply sufficient diversity of sources, likewise in the literature used. Therefore, and in my opinion, it cannot be emphasized enough, historical research, like all university research, benefits greatly in terms of quality when it is performed in a team, because the more diverse the research group's composition, the greater the chance of success for the desired change of perspectives. The argument that counts in our neoliberal society is, however, one of often one-dimensional economic profitability and utility. This makes the position of cultural historical research and also education itself particularly difficult. Investing in it does not yield immediately visible results, certainly not in the terms of practical advantage. Still, the historical approach and the way of thinking seem far from superfluous for our society. It makes itself into a possible dam against the terror of the immediately useful. Historical research, also in the historiography of education, transcends the short-sightedness of our own time by making it clear that the prevailing drive for utility is only one element of the long-term process of modernization. Without historical consciousness, critical distance toward the present is difficult, even not possible. It is in this sense that I believe that universities and their humanistic spirit will not die. And I am sure that the University of Latvia, given its survival of the occupation by two dictatorial regimes, can play a central role in this. Universitas Latviensis non morietur. The University of Latvia will not die. Long live Latvias Universitāte. Thank you.
Well, this is indeed a very positive and encouraging speech. And now, as we have finished with the formal presentations, we can continue with questions and comments. Yes, please. Yes, just as before the break, there are two microphones, and please identify yourself.
Okay, thank you. I am Sorin Costure, Vice Rector for International Affairs, University of Bucharest. My question is directed to our colleague from Edinburgh, Professor Bolton. At least for me, it was wonderful that I attended your presentation, because from your previous question, from the first section, I remain somehow with the wrong idea, that somehow you endorse the idea that the university should be job-oriented, which is false. And I also think that the university don't have to have as main target jobs, in fact, for our students. If we are going to educate well our students, they will get the jobs. Moreover, if we are doing a good job, they will create jobs, and that's it. I mean, I think it's a falsity here with these things, job market, and we have to attach university to the job market. No. Maybe it's the reverse. But I'm not going to insist on that. It's good that you clarify that. The crucial point was stressed by all of you, namely focusing not just on knowledge, but of these so-called soft skills, as it is critical thinking. It happens that I'm a philosophy professor and also a professor of critical thinking. So I will react more in my capacity of this than, vice rector of something. They are crucial. And it's crucial to not focus only on STEM. Because what we'll get at the end of the day, we'll get, rich economies, yet Brexit. We'll get smart devices in our pockets, in our houses, but extremism and nationalism in our societies. We may get medicine against, and we may even eradicate cancer, but on the other hand, we'll have these people fighting against vaccination and these kind of things. This is why I think we need complementary actions. Of course we need STEM, but of course that we need humanities and arts. And all three speakers, I think, were on the same page, and I'm on the same page, so I'm going to pursue this line. However, it was a slide where you said that there is a myth, namely the unity between research and teaching. And my question, and allow me for 2 minutes to explain that, will go along this. If you are talking about the unity, applying critical thinking, I think something wrong here. Nobody talks about unity. The right relation between research and teaching, I think, would be that in order to get quality teaching, that professor most probably should be a good researcher. Because if you are phrasing the things in terms of unity, it is that it's impossible to have a good professor without being a researcher, which obviously is false, and the reverse, to have a good researcher without being a good professor, which also obviously is false. So not the unity is in question. But yes, I think it's crucial for our universities to get quality researchers as our professors. Of course that we will have professors which are good only on teaching. And 2 more minutes. You know the story with Max Planck? Max Planck in the 20s earned the Nobel Prize, and he was asked by various German universities, by their colleagues, to deliver speeches in order to explain this quantum mechanics theory. And he went to Hamburg, went to Frankfurt, went to Berlin, and on his way to Munich, his driver asked him, "Professor Planck, are you not born to repeat and repeat and repeat the same story again and again and again?" And Max Planck said, "Well, no. But why are you asking me?" And the driver said, "Look, I attended all your talks, and I know your conference by heart. Can I deliver tonight?" And Max Planck said, "What the heck? Let's do it." And in Munich, the driver delivered the talk. Everything was fine, you know, applause at the end. But came the question period. And somebody put a simple question about quantum mechanics. And the driver, smart enough, he said, "It's too simple for me. I would let my driver to respond." And Max Planck responded to that. So my question would be, what do we need in our universities? Do we need Max Plancks or drivers who are repeating the same story? Thank you.
Well, if I've understood your question, you answered your own question at the end. You need Max Planck and the driver. The trouble is, we've only got Max Plancks, or we've only got drivers at the moment. I mean, years ago, and I remember years ago because I was there, university departments and universities were a team effort. You had a goalkeeper, you had a centre forward, you had people who played on the wings. You had teachers, people who were brilliant teachers who will be remembered decades later. You had brilliant researchers you would never dream of putting in front of any students, but it didn't matter because it was a team effort. But actually what's happened is the pattern of funding has meant that everybody must be research intensive. When I was running science and engineering at Edinburgh, the worst days of my life were when a head of department came along and said, "We are now 100% research intensive," to which my answer was, "Who in heaven's name is going to do the work?" So I think what's happened, we've become a monoculture. We're like ceaseless fields of corn without any apple trees. You know, we just do one thing. And actually our role is much more diverse. And I do think that some of my young colleagues who I admire enormously, they wilt under this pressure of finishing one paper, getting on with the next, doing another experiment, and so on. The incentive to really teach as they could is very slight. And what appalls me is, I mean, I asked Mr. What's his name? Mr. Navracic this morning, how would we train students for a future where we didn't know what the jobs might be? And he said, we should give them soft skills. And my reaction to that was, in other words, you're going to treat them again like performing monkeys, teaching them how to say hello, teaching them how to get on with people and the like, just as now we teach them this scientific proposition, of that scientific proposition, without having to think in between. I mean, my colleague said that he thought critical thinking was essential, and I agree, but it's not enough. The other thing we need is problem solving. And that combination of critical thinking and problem solving is something we're not good at doing. I think we give our students, on the whole, a pretty poor output. And I would say that, of course, we need researchers. They're vital, and especially the ones that, if you like, suddenly find something that's quite novel that we'd never thought existed before. It's absolutely vital. It stimulates the imagination. It creates the future. But unless we ensure that our fellow citizens, as they grow, are not going to be taken in by fake news, are not going to be seduced to thinking that they shouldn't vaccinate their children, but will understand enough to make intelligent decisions. I mean, Thomas Jefferson, who signed the American Constitution, was skeptical of democracy. His view was that before you had democracy, you needed education. You needed to be in a position where people could make intelligent judgments. And I think in a complicated world, our predominant duty is to make sure that the rising generation is able to carry this world on their backs in an effective and an efficient way. I'm not sure whether that's answered the question or not, because I wasn't terribly clear what the question was.
Other questions? Please.
Hello, thank you very much for your talk. My question will be rather short.
Excuse me, could you identify yourself?
Sorry, my name is Sibel Suzan. I'm the Vice Rector of Ankara University, Turkey. My colleague is a philosophy professor, so the question obviously is very full. But as a pharmacy professor, my question will be shorter, and I need maybe a bit certain answers. It's to all of you, these questions, but related to Professor Walton's slides. In one of your slides, you mentioned the ranking organizations, which are very important and popular for all universities. Although the social science-oriented universities or health science-oriented universities, it is very crucial now. So do you think we have to measure our success with these ranking organizations, or how can we actually express ourselves if we are a successful university or not? Or if we are not in these ranking systems, can we still a good university? What do you think about this?
All right, thank you for the question. Obviously, it's a very important one, and I doubt that there is one answer to this question. On the one hand, of course, we need to, somehow comply with the requirements, international requirements, and we need to be among the, 500 best universities and so on in the ranking system. On the other hand, we have many let's say we have, well, speaking about linguistics and again the Latvian language, culture and literature, then it's very difficult to publish or let's say to get published our research in Scopus, for example, which would be, well, for the STEM subjects.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
all right. So it's a very difficult question, right? We are trying to comply with the requirements, of course, because we want to be recognized. But on the other hand, there should also be some, well, national system of recognition. Yeah, thank you.
But, if we want to promote, like I did, let's say, the human sciences, then I think it is for the human sciences very essential to be taken seriously, and then they have to prove, I think, against their colleagues that they can compete with all these systems. And the same applies for universities. If you want to be taken seriously by others, it makes things much more easier if you have a good position on the rankings, if you have good publications and so on. So, to my mind, it is not a question of black and white. There is a lot of gray in between. And again, fighting against, or fighting is even the wrong word, I think, the hierarchy or competing with hierarchies. And it's a question of understanding. It is, I think, the difference, of course, there is a difference between the natural sciences and the human sciences and so on. There is the old difference, what Dilthey said, between erklären und verstehen. But I think to be taken seriously is to listen to each other and in the end, good researchers, whether they are and good professors or good teachers. So I think it is essential for a university, and that was one of the topics I wanted to underline, is that university remains a place of dialogue, of conversation, and of interdisciplinary and team research and so on and so on. So it is not the question who is the best and so on, but I know, and that is my experience, there is a lot of hierarchy. When I was appointed vice rector and deputy rector for a campus at my university, all the others said, what does the rector do now? A pedagogue, a historian of education, what can that be? But you have to prove yourself, I think. So this is important, and proving yourself is at a certain extent also reckoning with that kind of institutionalized procedures, whether we like it or not. But it makes us more comfortable if we can compete with that.
Well, I think there are several questions inside that. I think the first question is it a good metric? Is it a good measure of anything? And my answer was, statistically, it doesn't make any sense at all. That's true. Firstly, you're comparing apples and pears, teaching and research. No one has ever come up with a methodology which permits you to do that. Secondly, there's no null hypothesis. Thirdly, there's no definition of what a good university is. I mean, if I asked a dozen people, they'd give me a dozen answers. And then there's the Gaussian problem, which is obvious, and indeed there are a whole series of others. Mm-hmm. So I remember I wrote a paper for the League of European Research Universities about 15 years ago, about measurements. And it was presented to the commissioner, European commissioner, and he said, yes, but we've got to measure something, you know. So I said, okay, well, why don't you go and measure the number of daisies on the lawn outside? It's as useful. And I think there is a mindset where rather than use the millions of years of organic evolution that have produced these marvelous machines here, we now believe in a series of ordinal numbers from 1 till 10, and that's it. I mean, these numbers don't mean anything. I think beyond that, they're dangerous. They're dangerous because they're bad. What they have done in their history now is about 15 years long, 20 years long. What they've done within the first 10 or 15 years, the system is essentially research biased. And essentially what they did in the first 15 years was to push institutions that wanted to score on them towards a single research-dominated model. And then what's happened in the last 5 years is that many universities have realized that they're never going to score highly. They'll always be number 700. And so what do? They invent new schemes of, we are an industry-facing university, or we're a green university. Now, in a sense, I'm happy with that. The more pointless metric tables there are, the more it draws attention to the fact that the whole enterprise is flawed. And, ultimately, of course, it's a commercial enterprise. The Times Higher will now offer you courses on how to score highly on their system. We in the universities at least ought to say, look, this doesn't make sense. Yeah. The next question, of course, is do we have the political sense to be able to do that without being accused of trying to set aside some measurement of our value? And actually, I think there we probably don't. We're not very good at politics in the universities. So it's a difficulty. They're very seductive. People like league tables, whether it's football or universities. You never get rid of them. But what you can do is try and confuse them, and that would be a very creative act.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so another question.
If you were not able to be in the system, then I would say...
Catherine Isaacs, University of Pisa. The discussion this afternoon has been extraordinarily interesting in my view, and also, shall we say, the center of gravity has changed from the first session to the second in a very interesting way, and in part because of the interventions, I think, that were made at the end of the other session. And my first question would have been, if things had not gone ahead, whether Professor Bolton would agree that maybe it's bad research that has no connection, or maybe it does, with bad teaching. Because if we accept that the real reason, or the core of universities and what we try to do is to form a critical scientific mindset, which must mean curiosity, it must mean skepticism, but also creativity, and also curiosity for how the world works, well, then one would think that the person that could best, in a sincere, open way, introduce students to this world would be someone who does good research, which means with a critical mindset, with curiosity, with honesty, with skepticism, publishing negative results and not only positive ones. So let's say, I would imagine that your point of view was that if you have a stack of citations for minimal research that makes no difference, maybe you aren't a very good teacher. But if you were a really brilliant and honest researcher, maybe you would be a good teacher, because you would be the one most qualified to show students what this mindset is. Now, maybe this is a little bit idealistic at this point, because we've heard that our universities should be creating this competence, that competence, and the other competence, and sometimes the ones that I would consider central, as others do, that is a historical perspective, a variety of points of view, and critical attitude toward reality. Well, still, then we came up to the problem of rankings of all things, which I think is very interesting that then we came to rankings. Yes, rankings, something that may measure something, but probably doesn't, and probably measures whether universities are getting organized to improve their rankings. And here, I would come back to something I remember even writing years ago, that was that there should be, I think there should be, a European model of excellence in universities that is not necessarily high peaks here and there and the swamp, but is a high level of universities in all our countries that profit by being working together. And I wonder what you think about that, because I really wonder what the difference is if somebody is 150 in QA, or 800 in Times or Shanghai, another. I mean, really, isn't what we want is to have many, many universities in our cities and countries for our children, our students, that are very good universities with maybe some moments of excellence, being the very best in the world, maybe, but that we have a high level. I should think this would be the European model. What do you think?
I find it quite difficult to hear. What was the essential question? Can you interpret?
Well, essentially, as I understood, the question is whether we should have some sort of a measurement, ranking, or some sort of scheme that that does away with the huge differences between top universities and many other universities.
Well, we could put it that way, perhaps. I think that already the question of rankings was dealt with skeptically, and I'm just asking if maybe it would be a good idea if the European model were to be all as quite excellent, rather than imagining that someone is above the scale and everybody else is below it. We heard that there should be one in Latvia that's above 500. Well, I mean, shouldn't we all be 500, 400, 300?
I mean, it strikes me that one of the reasons why, the fundamental question you should ask, I suppose, is why, in a world where there was no commercial interest, why should you have ranking? Answer number one would be, if my daughter wants to go to university, maybe I would like to know which is a good university. But then I'd reply, rankings will never tell her whether she's going to get the right experience at university. It's the wrong question. So the individual students, it's irrelevant for them, I think. I mean, let me tell you a little story. I've got a friend who retired from MIT about 5 years ago. He was a graduate of Harvard and had a distinguished professorship at Harvard. And he had a young daughter who about 6 years ago was ready to go to university. And I asked him if she was going to go to Harvard. And he replied, no, of course not. She's going to go to somewhere where she can get a good education. Maybe when she goes for postgraduate studies, then she'll go to Harvard. Now, that was an interesting reply. And Jim is a pretty honest guy. So at the level of individual choice, it strikes me they're of no value. The next question is, what about the level of governments? Do they matter there? Are they telling a government whether it's placing its resources in the right place, whether its national universities are performing well or not? And it seems to me there you get the wrong answer as well. Nationally, the advice you get from people within the country, both from parents, from employers, from other institutions, is much more likely to be an intelligent reply to your question. So I think they have effectively become a tool for universities to boast, really. And that's it.
Thank you.
That's the only value they've got. And that means they have no value.
Any other questions? Well, if there are none, then I would like to thank you for participating in this event, and certainly I would like to warmly thank our three panelists. And in conclusion, I would like also to remind you that there is a gala concert at the National Opera at 7 o'clock tonight, and the Opera House is literally across the street, so you shouldn't get lost, and you are all welcome to attend it, but don't forget the paper invitation. That matters even in the digital age. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, one organizational moment for tomorrow.